окупанти до нас в Україну. Форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 919 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again as the Russians bomb their own city of Belgorod, smashing the place. Makes no sense whatsoever, but they're doing it. And also, they're once again threatening Ukraine's Western allies. It's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, as we've been able to get big news today that the Ukrainian armed forces have been able to continue their advance in the area of the Kursk Oblast, and have been able to advance around 1.5 to 2 miles today, capturing new villages near to the area of Bolshoi Soldatskoy, while also ensuring that the Russian Federation's brigade stuck on the southern end of the Reka Sim continues to remain stuck as pontoon bridges crossing the river today were once again targeted and destroyed, ensuring that there will be no crossings conducted in this area anytime soon, and the Doom Brigade is still going to be mired down in the southern area of that river. At the exact same time, we've been able to hear very significant news of more Ukrainian deep strike attacks attempting to hit the area of Karlivka, and we've also gotten updates on the major strikes that occurred around Novoshitinsk, where we see that the fire at that depot is continuing to burn around 2 to 3 days after the fire began from the initial drone strike. Not only that, but we got a crazy piece of news just a few hours before we went live that the city of Belgorod has been hit with one of the worst artillery barrages seen so far in the course of the entire war, and crazily enough, the Russians ended up accidentally bombing their own city with an MLRS barrage. We do not know the exact details of how that happened. We'll be going into the possible likely outcomes or reasons as to why this happened, but there was a load of picture and video evidence, and the devastation was incredibly high. From the preliminary information that we have at this moment, we have been able to hear that around 5 Russian civilians have been killed, dozens have been wounded, and this MLRS barrage, in terms of casualties, has ended up being one of the deadliest ones so far to ever hit Belgorod. At the exact same time, while the Ukrainian forces are making ground in Kursk and the Russians are committing an atrocity on their own people in Belgorod, we have been able to see an interesting amount of information developing inside of Ukraine. The commander of the Air Force was actually dismissed from his position today by President Volodymyr Zelensky. A very interesting move, and many people have stated that may possibly be because of the F-16 crash that occurred earlier this week. We have also seen that in other areas of Ukraine, the battles are continuing. We were able to get some footage of the firefights continuing within the Vovchansk front, and we've also been able to get a decent amount of video and picture evidence coming out of the area of Pokrovsk. While the Ukrainians are inflicting high casualties on the Russian Federation's armed forces within the area of Pokrovsk, we have been able to hear that the Russians have captured half of the town of Karlivka on the eastern side of the Vovcha River. And so we will be getting down there today into that area and giving a little bit more of an in-depth battle analysis, but still, today has been an absolutely bizarre and crazy piece of news, or a bit of news, considering the attack that just occurred on Belgorod only a few mere hours ago. But moving on into the major news, we were able to hear that the Ukrainians were once again successfully conducting a major campaign inside the area of the Kursk region. We were able to see that the Ukrainians were ensuring that the brigades stuck around the Glishkovo area will continue to be in bad shape as they've been knocking out critical infrastructure in this area and trying to make sure that the situation continues to get worse and worse for this group. We can actually see a Ukrainian FPV drone here in this clip flying into a substation, knocking out power around the Tetkino area, one of the larger settlements on the western side of this part of the river. We can see the explosion right there, right on the substation, which of course will damage it enough that it'll be temporarily knocked out. Considering that supply parts will not be able to be brought into this area due to all of the river crossings being knocked out, this means that substation is now permanently knocked out, and power access for the town of Tetkino has most likely also been knocked out as well along with that strike. Meanwhile, up in the area around the Glishkovo region, or more so the Reka Sim itself, we were able to see that the Ukrainians have continued their anti-bridge campaign, ensuring that the Russians are not able to make any kind of temporary crossings of any sort that would be able to supplement or replace completely the major bridge crossings at Glishkovo, Zavano, and also the town of Kurish that the Russian Federation had been using before those bridges were destroyed. The Ukrainians have considered the pontoon bridges in these areas a top priority, as the construction and upkeep of these bridges by the Russian army ensures that supplies and additional manpower can continue to flow either onto the southern side of the river or that this entire brigade, which is currently trapped down here at the moment, would probably be able to escape and fight another day, either helping to reinforce Russian forces around the Korenivo front, or just ensuring that there will be a larger amount of available manpower coming on down the line into the future. But still, we have seen that the Ukrainians, for this reason, have ensured that they have been trying to destroy as many of these crossings as possible. One of them was destroyed today near Zavano. We believe this is only one of the few that is actually operational at this point, and we were able to see that in this clip right here. We can actually see that it looks like they were in the process of setting it up or something along those lines, and the artillery started coming in and the Russians went running for the hills in every single direction. And we see right here some sort of a Russian vehicle that was brought into the area to help set up the pontoon bridge. And we see them continuing to have a beat on this specific vehicle, and also some of the shattered elements of the pontoon bridge in the river right there, confirming its destruction, and once again showing that this brigade on the southern side of the river is probably going to end up being trapped there for a pretty good while longer. It doesn't seem like the Russians have been able to successfully set up a pontoon bridge or a crossing in this area of any note, because the Ukrainians continue to target and destroy the bridges pretty much as quickly as they're being set up. For this reason, we are assuming that they're never able to effectively coordinate or actually work out a way to get the brigade back across the river and conduct a successful retreat from this area, and they're also not able to resupply or rearm the brigade on the southern side of the river to give them a better fighting chance. At the moment, we haven't heard a lot of updates yet about the firefights and the battles happening around the area of Komarovka and whether Ukrainian forces are continuing their advance in this area. We're not really sure if they have paused and they're waiting to really just deplete this Russian unit until they surrender, or whether they're actually facing any kind of serious resistance in some sort of a temporary form until this unit is completely depleted of ammunition, and then the Ukrainians practically roll right over them. We're not really sure which one it will be, but we are waiting to get more information and a clearer picture on what the actual tactical situation around Komarovka is looking like at this moment. But moving on out of the area of Komarovka and a little bit on further and into the area of Nechaev, this is actually where we have seen the largest and most successful advance by the Ukrainians over the past few days. According to the Russians themselves, they have stated that Ukrainian forces have liberated Nechaev and Nizhnya Perovaya in the Kursk Oblast. The town of Nechaev, if I can go over here, is right... Let's see here. Where is Bolshoi Soldatskoy? There it is. So it's right over here. Nechaev, and then also Nizhnya Perovaya, which is right next door. And we can see that both of those have been liberated by Ukrainian forces. This is a fairly decent move, considering that Nechaev and Nizhnya Perovaya is on a downhill slope. The peak of the hill that it's on is actually here on the eastern side under Ukrainian control. This is showing that Ukrainians have been able to secure control of this small valley in between the hills, and they are beginning to advance further north and towards the area of Bolshoi Soldatskoy, at least on its western flank. This is a fairly decent and a pretty good development, actually, because it is showing that the Ukrainians, even when meeting what we would expect to be larger Russian resistance from units like the 810th Naval Infantry Brigade, they are still able to force them into a retreat and push them further back. The Russians are starting to solidify defensive positions in this area, or at least coordinated defensive forces, which is making it much more difficult for Ukraine to gain ground. But still, even with the situation becoming more strenuous and more difficult, the Ukrainians seem to not be having that much of a problem with still breaking the Russians' lines and gaining a little bit of ground in every other front, except for the one around Korenivo, where the battle appears to be fairly difficult and a fairly pitched battle at that. But we were also able to see, speaking of the Korenivo front, that the Korn group was helping out a cat today. They like to help cats. Look at that cat. They gave it water.
Man, that cat's like crazy acting. It's like dying to get to that water.
Man, the Russia's weakest cat versus Ukraine's strongest vodka. It's like, hey, can I have the vodka, please? Give it to them. Something like that. It's like, but still, I gotta say, very nice to see the Korn group helping out a cat like that. Not really like a strategic picture coming out of this video, but still pretty neat. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we did get to see that another Russian POW has been taken. Apparently, according to the information, this guy is from the 810th Naval Infantry Brigade, once again showing the 225th and the 176th Territorial Defense Forces Brigade, which the 225th is attached to, is still engaging and fighting the Russian armed forces in this area.
Козлов Денис.
Громче.
Козлов Денис.
Служишь где?
810-й полк морской пехоты.
Кто тебя в плен взял? Плен кто тебя взял?
Сам не понял.
Что ты не понял?
Командир парадейки сказал, что сейчас приедет группа на ротации менять. Я спустился в блиндаж взять вещи. А там все 200.
Командира имя называй.
The devil just casually interrogating this guy in the background. He's just like, where are you from? What are you doing here?
Also, it's not like the Ukrainian's dog was being interrogated out in the background too, or the Russian.
It's like, whoa.
Ждите, суки. Работает группа Гром 225 ШБ.
And that's the end of that clip. But still, another prisoner of the 810th Naval Infantry Brigade was captured, once again showing that the Ukrainians are able to break the Russian forces in this area well enough to ensure that things are not going too well in this area. Matthew also just told me that we're having a bit of an audio delay, which is not great to hear. Sometimes that happens, and I guess it is what it is. But hey, we gotta live with what we gotta live with, am I right? We're exactly right. But while Ukraine is still conducting successful attacks on the territory of the Russian Federation side of Kursk that the Russians still control, they are also continuing to conduct attacks throughout the territory of the Russian Federation with their drone forces, and these have ended up appearing to be really successful. In the area around Karlivka today, we were able to see that one drone of the Ukrainian armed forces got shot down. It appears that these drones were trying to target one of the airfields near to the city of Kurchatov, and I'll be showing y'all one of these clips right here. And also, let me make sure this is Kurchatov. It's Karlivka, sorry. For some reason, I said Kurchatov for no reason at all. But anyways, here's a clip of one of the drones getting shot down. Oh.
Oh, Bliat, that was very abrupt.
But others did not get shot down. Now, that may be a little bit of a Russian success story right there to shoot down a drone like that, but from what we can tell, it looks as though another one was a little bit more lucky and ended up apparently hitting its target somewhere out there in the distance, as the smoke plume rising from the ground is showing that a successful explosion did occur down there. We just don't know what exactly it hit at the moment. It is interesting, though, to note that they were targeting the town of Karlivka. It's not that far away from Moscow, actually. And another interesting thing about the town of Karlivka, if we go up here to the town of Karlivka, and if the satellite image loads, I think our internet is having some issues tonight, Matthew. Not going to lie. Oh, for real, bussin'. But
Yes, sir. It's actually having 2 bars right now. So there's like a 5 to 6 second delay between you talking and me talking. So I don't know what's up, man, but Spectrum's at it again.
And they're at it again. You gotta love our internet provider. Am I right, folks? Am I right or am I not? Of course we're right on that, because they just screw us over every once in a while. But anyways, moving on from that, apparently it was targeting the airport, or it may have been targeting some sort of major Russian industry within this area. And we can see that even out here in the outskirts, there is fairly significant industrial activity happening around the area of Karlivka. So we'll be waiting to see a better report on what was actually hit and what caught on fire as a result of this attack. But it does seem as though it is just a part of a large myriad of attacks that have ended up being really successful. For example, we finally got satellite picture of the destruction at Pokrovsk, and it does appear that the entire facility ended up going up in flames. There seems to be very few silos, or really, not really silos, tanks in the actual tank farm that ended up surviving the initial fire that resulted about 2 weeks ago from a Ukrainian drone attack. A few of the tanks appear to have survived on the far side, but not that many. And it is once again showing us that the Russian Federation is having a really tough time dealing with this one. It seems as though the damage is pretty significant, and they might be completely out of fuel. Also, let's see. So apparently there's a fire train down here or something like that. I would have to say the only thing that seemed to have been trained in that area was the Russian police and the way they ran to the hills, because they really couldn't do anything. But moving on up into the area of Kamensk, Shetinsky, and Shakhty, we did get to see a nice, good Russian roast happening in this area. Looks pretty familiar to the Proletarsk fire. This is a completely different oil depot in this area of the country that appears to be toasting and roasting quite significantly. And look at that fire roar.
From the road, it looks like an Amazon warehouse or something on fire from the road. What is this? The oil depot you said?
This is an oil depot.
Oh, that's crazy. It's very clean looking from the street, just with that nice clean white paint.
Yeah, it does. It's brand new too. But you know what's even better, Matthew, is that if this was an Amazon facility, you know Jeff Bezos would be like, well, instead of taking a restroom break, why don't y'all go and pee on it? Oh, or something like that.
That's actually a pretty good one.
Oh man. But we can
Damn lag, man. People are lagged down the stream.
Oh, I'm telling you, man, I know it, but we just got to try and get through this. We got to soldier on, my baba boy. But anyways, moving on from that, really quickly, I'm going to do something that will hopefully fix this problem, at least on this stream side. So hang on just a second, everyone. I'm going to try and fix this. Hello, can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me well? Matthew, can you hear me?
Yes. Did you put it in rice?
I did. I turned it off and turned it back on again, and that ought to fix it. So tell me, when is the part where you hear me stopping talking? Start talking as soon as I stop talking, and that will be right now.
I hear you right now.
Okay, that's like a 5-second delay still, but not that bad. Not that bad. It's getting a little bit better. But moving on from that and into a little bit more news, and speaking of the severe Ukrainian drone attacks that are happening, we also got to see something that was really, really interesting right here. Some Ukrainian long-range strikes, what the Ukrainians are planning on doing with it, and some of the long-range missile systems that they're starting to test out just about right now. And it seems as though United 24, the wonderful folks over at United 24, were able to pull through and make a very interesting campaigns in the Kursk Oblast currently. We cannot understate the success. Oh, wait a minute. It says that we have no data. Matthew, can you still hear me?
I didn't hear you for like a good solid 10 seconds, but you're back now.
Oh, well, we're just going to have to power on through. Soldier on. But here's the clip.
One of the biggest Russian attacks since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. On Monday, more than 200 aerial threats were launched against Ukraine. Nearly 30,000 Russian troops were redeployed in the Kursk region. What's the situation there? Ukraine won its first medals at the Paris Paralympics. Hi, I'm Eva Kucherenko. This is United 24 Media. A child was killed when Russia attacked Kharkiv using guided aerial bombs, reported the city mayor. At that moment, the girl was on the playground. In another part of Kharkiv, a fire broke out in a 12-story residential building, which is now partially destroyed. At least 3 civilians were killed. According to the regional governor, so far 28 people are reported injured in these attacks on Kharkiv.
A children's playground, in addition to 2 private residential buildings, were razed to the ground, and work is still underway. Also, a multi-story building has been destroyed. 40 people are injured and hospitalized. And I want to say that in one place where an aerial bomb struck a multi-story building, the work is still ongoing and the situation is very difficult.
At least 2 people were killed and 11 others were injured in a Russian airstrike on Sumy on the night of August 13. According to the prosecutor's office, the Russian military targeted an industrial facility. Ukrainian forces launched a successful long-range attack on 3 key Russian targets. One of them is located approximately 1,500 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. The drones struck the Atlas oil depot in the Rostov region, Zenit oil depot in the Kyiv region, and field artillery depot in the Voronezh region. The operation was carried out by Special Operations Forces in collaboration with the Main Directorate of Intelligence and other Defense Forces units. Fighters of the 28th Brigade Air Defense Unit hit a Russian Su-25 aircraft. According to the commander of the ground forces, this action took place in the Kramatorsk direction.
One second, everyone. I'm going to pause this really quickly. With some of this we've actually covered before, but I'm trying to see, because from what I was able to gather earlier, this was some sort of a documentary. This actually looks like a 924 news summary. So it looks to me like it is just a complete news summary, and I hate to say this, we're going to have to cut this off because it's kind of our job to cover the news, so we don't want to be running someone else's kind of like news summary. I thought this was a documentary on long-range strikes, but apparently not. But moving on from that and out of that area, it is now time for us to move on down into the area of Belgorod, because we've actually gotten some pretty interesting reports about what's been happening in this area. But before I get down into this area and start speaking about the news here in Belgorod, I want to make sure that I bring up something really quickly so that we all can discuss this and also weigh in on it. Right now, we are starting to hear a very interesting statement from the Russian Federation that they will respond harshly if the West lifts restrictions on Western weapons that have been given to Ukraine and allow them to be used in an unlimited form wherever Ukraine wants them to be used. This would particularly impact Ukraine's deep strike abilities into the Russian Federation, as British, French, and American long-range missiles would be able to strike Russian military, airfield, and other kinds of secure or vital infrastructure throughout the entirety of the Russian Federation, about 300 miles in. Which means that at its closest, some of these ATACMS missiles would actually be able to hit Moscow itself. The Russian Federation has made it very clear that they are going to be responding very harshly to the West if such authorization was given. And a lot of people are wondering whether the Russians are actually serious about that or not. And I would like to hear y'all's opinions on that while I go through a little bit of the news that we're hearing in Belgorod at the moment. Do y'all think that the Russians are just running their mouths again and that there's actually no actual consequences to providing Ukraine with unlimited abilities to use Western weapons in any way they see fit? Or do y'all think that this actually would be crossing a serious red line, one that actually would force the Russians into lashing out this time around, although they never have when any other red line like this has been given before? But moving on from that, and hopefully we will get really good answers and input from all of y'all here while we cover the rest of this news. Moving on into the Belgorod area, we have also been able to hear of some pretty significant incident that happened here today. The city of Belgorod has a population of about 300,000 to 350,000 people. It's one of the largest Russian cities within this area of the country, Kursk being a little bit larger, but only by 100,000 people, and being much further north than the city of Belgorod is. Belgorod is only about 30 miles away from the Ukrainian border, and also on top of that, Belgorod has served as a major Russian logistics and basing area for forces that have been conducting the Vovchansk offensive currently, and have also been operating within the area of the northern Luhansk Oblast. Belgorod cannot be understated in importance strategically for the Russian Federation and their continued war goals inside of the state of Ukraine. However, it seems as though something has happened today that is pretty bizarre, and we can already rule out the Ukrainians for being responsible for this attack. From what we've been able to tell today, 127mm rockets, particularly of a BM-21 Grad variety, were fired into the area around the city of Belgorod and ended up impacting and hitting an incredibly large area. At this moment, 5 Russian civilians are dead, and several dozen are wounded from these strikes. We already know that the Ukrainians cannot be responsible for the attack because a BM-21 Grad from the Ukrainian border simply does not have the range to be able to fire into the city of Belgorod. The Russians are the only people who have access to the territory nearby to the city of Belgorod to have the kind of shorter range necessary to be able to fire into the city like we saw on film here in a moment. We'll be showing y'all as many of the films as we can. We did have to curate some of them because they were not suitable for viewing here on the stream as they were a little bit too graphic. But we are going to be showing as many of the clips we can that are not too graphic for YouTube. I want to keep in mind, though, that what we are seeing at the moment appears to be some sort of a Russian incident that happened in Belgorod. We're not exactly sure what the incident was, but we'll get into that after we start showing the clips. So here is one of the first clips of the explosions and fires that resulted in Belgorod because of the MLRS attack that occurred just a short while ago. And moving us into
pretty big fire, by the way. It looks like something like flammables on fire, not just like a house or something.
Yeah, I would agree. It's pretty wild stuff. But we can also see another fire right here as well. And then moving on to the next clip, we can see a picture of some of the residential buildings on fire further down the way, burning pretty prolifically. And we can also see another video of several fires that have broken out in Belgorod, all of them being caused by the 127mm MLRS rockets that impacted this area. Moving on from this and into another bit of footage that we got, We'll save that one for last. We did get to get some pictures of the explosions that were occurring. And this was a very important thing to realize here with what we were seeing, is that there are multiple different impact areas where smoke is starting to rise, and this rules out a large amount of different kinds of systems that could be used. One could argue that the kind of rockets that may have been used may have been that of the Smerch or the Uragan variety, which according to our range estimates would have enough range to be fired from Ukraine and into the area of the city of Belgorod. However, in other videos later on, we will see that the explosions and impacts appear to be quite small, suggesting that it was most likely a 127mm BM-21 Grad rocket and not that of a Smerch or Uragan, once again ensuring that the range at which these rockets were fired could not have been from the territory of Ukraine. These had to have been fired from inside of the Russian Federation and at the city of Belgorod. We were also able to get some more videos from inside of the city showing the moment of impact. This was actually on one of the motorways near to the western side of Belgorod, and this dash cam is showing a Russian civilian driving into the city. You will notice that here on the left side of the road, one of the MLRS rockets actually hits dead on onto a moving car. We are assuming the worst in regards to that car. Maybe some of y'all, well actually all of y'all will largely catch on to what I mean by that, but here's the clip. So him driving along, and immediately an MLRS rocket hits that car, wiping it out instantly. We can see another explosion over here of another rocket, and once again, to analyze this really quickly, we can clearly denote from the size and scale of this explosion, which we've seen many times throughout this war, that this is a 127mm Grad rocket. A 220mm or a 230mm Smerch or an Uragan rocket would be far larger in explosive mass. And so for this reason, we do know that this is a shorter range MLRS system that's being used. But we now see our dash cam hero driving on as quickly as he can out of the area with MLRS impacts surrounding the highway at that point. Moving on from that clip and into the next one, we were also able to see a video from an intersection inside of Belgorod in one of the cars, once again showing a large amount of these MLRS rockets impacting the surrounding area. Moving on from that clip and on into our next one, we also got to see the Russians. Oh, this one apparently was removed. That's a little bizarre. Let me go to Twitter and see if I can find that one, because it was just a simple dash cam of, well, not a dash cam, a traffic cam of an intersection. So let me see if I can find that really quickly. Hopefully we have that. We do not have that on our Twitter. So it looks as though I will not be able to show y'all that clip, but it was probably one of the best clips we had so far of the impacts coming into the area. Once again, showing that it was a Grad, but sadly, I cannot find that at this moment. Let me see if I can quickly try and find it by just typing in Belgorod on...
Let's see here. Go check out the likes tab on our Twitter page. I've liked a couple of things that it could be.
Let's see here. Yeah, here we go. So let me go and try and grab it. And let's see. No, that's not actually. I just found it a second ago. Let me see if I can go back to it here really quickly. Yeah, so here we go. This is what I'm looking for. It's this clip right here. It's 27 seconds long, and it's a traffic cam looking down at that intersection where we just saw that car moving through, and this gives us a clearer view of some of the explosions that were occurring around the area of the intersection. I'm going to be muting the music, but we can see the impacts from the Grads hitting the surrounding area in quite a pretty quick fashion, once again showing it's a BM-21, not a BM-27 or any other kind of a larger MLRS system. That one hit something like a substation or a generator or something along those lines, because it appears that a fire has immediately erupted in that area.
And Russia targeted their own city because they just simply mistargeted, or like, what was the catch with that again?
From what we can tell, I don't really know what happened. Like, it's kind of a bit of a mystery, because one thing we know is that the Ukrainians do not have the range with a Grad to be able to hit the city of Belgorod. And let me make sure to back that up for y'all really quickly by showing y'all a BM-21 Grad. This is what I'm believing was used in this instance, because the number of rockets was wildly large, and not only that, the actual explosions were somewhat small. So going off of those two things, we can get a fairly good idea that this Grad was probably the one that was used. Another interesting thing about this, and I believe The caliber is actually not 127, it's 122 millimeter. Once again, kind of on the smaller side, and once again having a higher volume of them, around 40 of them. The thing with this, though, is that this thing does not have a really significant range on it. Let me see if I can actually get y'all a range estimate for the rockets. So, let's see here. It should be probably somewhere up here. Let's see. Scrolling down. All 40. 20 seconds. Let's see. Rockets armed with high explosive fragmentation, which is what we were looking at, it can be fired from a distance of 12 miles. Now, 12 miles is a pretty considerable range. That's about the short end range of an M777 gun howitzer. However, 12 miles from the Ukrainian border is not that far. That's how far Ukraine would have been able to fire with a conventional BM-21 Grad, meaning that the Ukrainians have to be ruled out of the picture for this strike, as this strike was actually hitting somewhere on the western side of Belgorod, right about here where my mouse cursor is. Going off of that, we would have to assume that a Russian Grad battery may have ended up setting up somewhere near the Ukrainian border, planning on firing into an area inside of Ukraine, and somehow ended up getting things completely wrong, and actually ended up firing north and towards the city of Belgorod. That's really the only explanation I can come up with at the moment, because there's just no way the Ukrainians could have conducted this attack. They simply do not have the range in their own MLRS batteries to be able to conduct something like this with the caliber of rockets we saw. And so clearly for this reason, the Russians ended up somehow, some way bombing their own city in this area. I really don't know how in the world that actually works. That's the only logical explanation I can come up with. But we were able to hear from the Russians that 5 citizens did die in this attack, pretty much killed outright. We're assuming that some of them were probably in that car we saw on the highway that got hit earlier in another clip.
What is that, the mayor out there trying to calm things down?
Maybe. I don't even know who that really is.
Also, I see people in the live chat, they're talking about maybe this is a false flag attack. That was something that was running across my head the whole time, is I was thinking, how did they mess up this badly to fire like MLRS right into the middle of Belgorod where it's populated? And notice, this was such a bad mess up that was right in the middle of a basically civilian area where there's houses and stuff like that. To me, that seems like maybe that could have been intentional on the Russians' part to maybe try to pin it on Ukraine, but I haven't seen anything yet to suggest that they're trying to say it was Ukraine that did it. But that could be coming after a false investigation. They might end up saying that Ukraine was the one to pull it off. So that's really the only solution I could see to this whole situation, is they're trying to frame Ukraine for this attack.
It's a really bizarre instance. They probably will end up blaming Ukraine for the attack, because it would be wildly embarrassing to say that a Russian artillery unit ended up getting the coordinates wrong and ended up firing into Belgorod. That probably will be the way this goes, because there's no other way to explain it. And once again, I gotta hit this home again. There is no way that we can see or that we can tell of right now that the Ukrainians could have fired into Belgorod with this kind of an MLRS system. It is a BM-21 Grad, that we're very sure of. It's firing 122mm rockets, that we're also very sure of as well, based off of the size of the explosions. However, that just simply does not have the range to fire into Belgorod from Ukraine. Belgorod's 30 miles into Russia, even on the outskirts. A Grad can only fire 12 miles. So there's a whole extra, pretty much 16 to 18 miles there that this Grad would magically have to be able to fire across to be able to even hit the outskirts of Belgorod, much less the city center. So going off of that, anyone using a small amount of logic could interpret that the only way a Grad could have fired on Belgorod is that it had to have been a Russian Grad within Russian-controlled territory. We're going to be trying to see how the Belgorod situation starts to unfold. We really don't know for certain how this will go on the Russian side. They may try and sweep this under the rug, knowing that it would be a sign of embarrassment. There's really no way to explain this all too well without making it look like it was clearly a large amount of incompetence. Or they could try and blame it on Ukraine, which is a pretty likely option considering that that's easy. It's stress-free, and I mean, hell, the Ukrainians are low-hanging fruit. The Russians can just blame anything and everything they want on them, and at least as far as the Russian public is concerned, it'll stick. So that's what I would have to say, at least on my interpretation of this. It has a half and half of either being completely swept under the rug or completely blamed on Ukraine. But this is certainly a Russian artillery incident of a major scale that ended up happening. But this actually moves us on into the use of weaponry. Speaking of this potential of this maybe being a false flag and maybe trying to make it look like the Ukrainians ended up bombing Russian citizens today, this does bring us about to a pretty big question that I asked you all about before we got into this news inside of Belgorod. A lot of people have been talking about the Russian statements that came out today, where they once again started to threaten the West that if we approve the usage of Western weapons for Ukraine to do really whatever they want with them, there will probably be some sort of serious repercussions that the West will be facing at the hands of Russia for making that kind of decision. And a lot of people have weighed in on that while I've been covering the news that happened in Belgorod and giving their 2 cents on what they think about that, whether the Russians are still just master yappers or whether there's actually any kind of serious concern behind this threat this time. But Matthew, what are people thinking about it and what are you thinking?
All right, so now that we've got even more legendary yapping from the Russian government, saying that it'll respond harshly if the West lifts restrictions on Western weapons in Ukraine, and what are your thoughts? So 65% said Russia won't do a thing, and it's all a yap, while 18% said Russia might lash out this time, and 11% said, I doubt it, but I need more info. And when they say respond harshly, I'm assuming they're referring to responding harshly to NATO, and that would mean attacking NATO. So I really don't think that Russia is really that crazy enough to do that just yet. Maybe one day they might be crazy enough to do that, but right now they know they would lose that pretty quick. So I don't think this is a real red line. It's once again just yapping from the Russian government. It means nothing, and Putin is once again with the empty threats. And at this point, I think Putin knows his credibility has gone so far down the toilet that it doesn't even matter if he doesn't follow through, because it literally means nothing. At this point, it's basically propaganda value for his people to think, oh, look, the strong, valiant Putin is standing up against NATO, and he knows he can't do a damn thing about it. So it is what it is, and I'm with the 65%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my honest opinion, I believe that this is the Russians being master yappers. There's not really a lot that can be done if the Russians ended up getting pissed off with the West. We have to make that very clear. A lot of people, for some reason, still assume that the Russians are some massive military power, but the war in Ukraine has shown that the Russian Federation is truly an aging and ailing former Soviet empire that's never really recovered from the collapse of the Soviet Union economically or militarily. The Russians have incredibly antiquated technology. If they have any modern technology, it's in very limited numbers and fielded very poorly. They also have incredibly low training. They have incredibly bad commanders, both on the field grade, well, not just the field grade. They have general staff field grade and also the company grade or something along those lines, officers that are not really that good at conducting their actions or really following out orders or coming up with effective orders to make. There's a great deal of corruption. The Russians economically are already in a pretty tough spot at the moment about the war in Ukraine. So it would be really tough for them to then say we're going to conduct an entire war against the collective West, because they can't even really fight a what would be called, at least pre-war, a backwater country that a lot of people didn't even know the name of, to be entirely honest. I mean, if you asked a lot of Americans before the war, do you know what Ukraine is? Most of them would have gone, no. Because Ukraine isn't, like, Ukraine has done incredibly well in this war. I want to make that very clear, because I'm not trying to discredit the Ukrainians or knock them down a couple of notches here by saying this, but no one thought of Ukraine before this war as some kind of a massive economic and military powerhouse that would be able to knock the teeth out of any major country in the world. No one ever thought that. And I mean, it was a pretty reasonable thought to not think that. I mean, economically, Ukraine's fairly small. It has a GDP in around the 200 to 300 billions. That's not that big. I mean, we have people in America, private citizens, that are worth more than the national GDP of Ukraine. So it's not really that big of a country economically. Militarily, it wasn't really that impressive of a country. It was using mostly older Soviet tech. And it wasn't really that impressive of military either, because everyone, if they ever paid attention to Ukraine, saw how they performed during the Donbass conflict in 2014, and there was much to be desired. So when Ukraine started to actually win in this war against the Russians, a lot of people really didn't think first, wow, the Ukrainians must be some kind of a military or an economic powerhouse. What they really thought was, damn, the Russians must suck. I mean, you know, to be beat like by a country like Ukraine, you've got to suck militarily. And I would have to say that that's probably the fairly accurate assessment to work off of with Ukraine. Now, they certainly have morale, and they certainly have very good training, especially compared to the Russians. But the Russians' military is not one that is impressive, and it's not one that, at least strategically or tactically, does well at all. It's an army of a time long since past. The modern day is all about contract armies made up of contract soldiers with advanced high-tech equipment. It doesn't have to be in massive numbers. It just has to be good tech in decent numbers, not small numbers, though. That's when you run into a whole other problem. But the Russians have none of that. So right now, they're bogged down in Ukraine. They're having a really hard time even defending the Kursk Oblast at the moment because they've run out of combat troops. So then, if they want to go to war with the West, what do? I mean, really, what would their option be? Or do they start whipping out conscripts in the masses, and then they just send them out into the Baltics and Poland to get slaughtered? I mean, I don't really know what the plan would be there, because all they have left at this point are conscripts. And if y'all thought that the war in Ukraine was being run like a joke on the Russian side, wait until you see an entire army group made up of conscripts. That would truly be the Ringling Brothers circus in military form, at least in the area around the Suwalki Gap or in the Baltics. So going off of that, I would 100% have to say that it's master yapping, in my opinion. I just don't think that they would ever be able to take on the West. I mean, they can hardly even take on Ukraine. And Ukraine has and I have to say this, Ukraine has incredible morale. They have incredible fighting spirit. Their training is really good at this point. They are certainly a battle-experienced armed force, which really counts for a lot in the modern day. But at the same time, we have to remember, it's not the Polish army, it's not the German army, it's not the American army. It's an army that's using a pretty large hodgepodge of Soviet-era equipment and then some Western equipment mixed in, but that Western equipment is about 40 years old, and the last time it would have ever been considered the leading cutting edge of Western military tech, that would have been during the late 80s when the Soviet Union was still a country. So going off of all of this and seeing that the Russians are still losing to a country like that, there's nothing that they could do to the West rather than nuke us. And I have a feeling that they're not going to nuke us first, because that would be a really stupid way of doing things, because you've literally skipped the entire escalation ladder and climbed to the very top instantly, and there's no way to come back from that. So I would say master yappers 100%, and I wouldn't expect much from the Russians in terms of a retaliatory response if we were to approve the usage of Western weapons in any way, shape, or form for the Ukrainian armed forces. And so with that,
this has really been a long line of master yapping since the very beginning of the war. Because you remember the last red line that they gave for the Russians. They said that if the F-16s go to Ukraine, they get there, which they have. They've been there for, I think, about a month now. They said they would take that as a nuclear threat, and they would go berserk on Ukraine and also the West, and that would start World War III. That's what they were saying for a long time, and look what's happened. Absolutely nothing. Russia's losing. Now they've gotten invaded in their home turf. They're still not doing anything, and they can't even get the people out of their country. So it's just a bunch of yapping. Like, that seems to be like the Russian playbook at this point, is to come out and say something crazy. They have no intention of backing it up, and then from there they just lose all their credibility. They do that time and time again, and I don't even understand it really, except for trying to basically tell their civilians that we've got this under control and we're threatening the West. I don't even understand why they're doing it, because the West doesn't take it seriously. I don't even think China or their allies take that seriously either. They know they're not going to do anything, and it's just yapping.
And I would agree, and it really is yapping. And also, you're saying, I think the Chinese don't even believe him. Well, they don't. They don't at all, because one of the big pieces of news that came out today is that the Chinese financiers are running for the hills from Russia. And I'll explain why really quickly. I want to make sure that we get this correct. So I'm going to read this to y'all. This is from Reuters today. Chinese state banks are shutting down transactions with Russia in mass, quote unquote, and billions of yuan worth of payments are held up. A source close to the government, who spoke on condition of anonymity, told Reuters. China is Russia's largest trading partner, accounting for a third of Russia's foreign trade last year, and supplying items such as vital industrial equipment and consumer goods to help Russia weather Western sanctions. It also provides a lucrative market for many Russian exports that China relies on, from oil and gas to agricultural products, and also, which was not stated in Reuters, timber, which is a highly sought-after resource in a rapidly growing China. But nevertheless, it seems as though even the Chinese are starting to get pretty scared. According to what we're hearing, it seems as though this follows the threats of secondary sanctions by the U.S. Treasury earlier this summer, and now the Chinese financiers and the Chinese businessmen are trying to close up shop and get out of there before they take any kind of economic hits at all. This is once again showing us that not even the Chinese believe the Russians' wit or their strength, for that matter. They believe that they are truly at the ebb and flow and the mercy of the world at large at this point, and really don't have a way to morph things or control things for Russia's favor. And so for that reason, when the trade winds start heading another direction, the Chinese businessmen pack up and start sailing that direction and not Russia's. So this is once again showing us, Matthew largely hit it down on the nail right there, and it also is very true. The Russians do not have any kind of country in the world in practicality that actually believes their statements at this point. They just don't they don't think, no one thinks the Russians can actually do anything at this point, and they are largely internationally being viewed as a joke. Pretty funny if you ask me, because I remember back in the day before this war began, everyone viewed Russia as a more dangerous threat in America than China, which is bizarre thinking about that now, because if you actually look at the disparity in between Russia and China, economically and militarily, the Russians were never even close to being around the Chinese level, really ever since 2008. But anyways,
Also, just a side note, real quick. Did I see that correctly in the article? It said that China was Russia's biggest trading partner, or that was China's biggest trading partner is Russia. Is that accurate?
China is Russia's biggest trading partner. The biggest trading partner of China is America, technically.
Okay, I was just wondering. Let's see. China is okay. I read it backwards. And I was about to say, there's no way in hell that China is doing the most trading with Russia. I was about to say that takes the United States. That's their spot.
Yeah, I mean, the United States is China's largest trading partner. Crazily enough, y'all wouldn't believe this. We've looked at this a while ago, so if anyone's new here tonight, many people will be shocked to know that China is not America's largest trading partner. Our largest trading partner is actually Mexico. So a lot of people will probably be shocked by that. Mexico beats out China by, I believe, 50 or 60 billion annually at this point. We trade about, I think it's something like $500 billion worth of goods every single year with Mexico, and it's around $450 to $420 billion with China. China used to be our major trading partner, but over the past few years, things have started to shift as China's economy has started to shift itself from an industrial economy to a services economy, much like America's currently is, because China is trying to become a prosperous socialist society, according to Xi Jinping, and a part of that is pretty much modeling the American economic system to a T, and that means that eventually they have to shift from being an industrialized country to a services or a service sector type country like America is these days, because that's considered the next step in economic evolution and prosperity, pretty much for everyone around the world. But with that, I hope that kind of goes through the whole trade things fairly well, just in case anyone was curious about that and was wondering, well, if we're China's biggest trading partner, doesn't that mean that China is our biggest trading partner? It actually doesn't. But anyways, with that, and moving on out of this pretty funny news that the Chinese don't even really believe the Russians have a lot going on for them these days, we also got to hear once again from all of y'all about what y'all are thinking about the Belgorod situation right now. It's one hell of a situation, no doubt. It's probably one of the worst ones that we've seen so far, beyond the Crocus City Hall attack that occurred a little while ago. It ended up killing around 100 Russian citizens that were inside of the Crocus City Hall when that attack occurred. That, of course, was attributed to a certain insurgent group that is from the area of southern Russia around Dagestan, but nevertheless, a lot of people have been weighing in on the Belgorod attack and wondering what in the world really happened with this, or what is the motive behind this? Is this just sheer incompetence of the highest order, or is this a false flag by the Russians meant to blame the Ukrainians with bombing and killing Russian civilians? That way maybe they can justify further escalations of military action against Ukraine, such as a full mobilization of the conscripts and using them in the war. A lot of people have been weighing in their opinions on this, and Matthew, what are folks thinking, and what are you thinking about it?
All right, so now that we've seen the footage of Russia lobbing munitions into, or not occupied, but civilian Belgorod, right into neighborhoods and making them dance like Pac-Man on the street, which is insane to see, what's really happening with this? So 43% said it is a Russian false flag, while 39% said no, it looks like pure incompetence, and at 10% said only time will tell on this one. And honestly, like I have a very hard time believing that even with Russian incompetence, I have a hard time believing that this is actually incompetence because that would be such a mess up of royal proportions that I just find that really hard to believe. I don't think the Russians are that incompetent to launch stuff right into neighborhoods in Belgorod. That would be insane to believe that. I would personally have to be within the 43% that said it is a Russian false flag. The only catch with that, though, is we haven't heard Russia actually officially blame Ukraine yet for this attack. But that's probably coming shortly because these attacks just happened. I think, let's see here. They just happened about 7 or 8 hours ago. So Russia really hasn't had the chance yet to really spool up the propaganda. And it might happen tomorrow. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm with the 43%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my opinion, I believe that this was incompetence of the highest order. That's what I would have to understand because the Russians conducting a false flag like this is really weird. Usually they go for pretty standard kinds of bombings, like the Belsan apartment bombings, which started off the Second Chechen War back in 1999. But we've never seen that the Russians have ever tried to conduct a false flag where they fired an MLRS into a city. This would be a first. Usually with these kinds of attacks, because 5 Russian citizens killed in reality isn't that much. Usually false flag attacks, people try and go for a much larger number, usually somewhere in the hundreds. Like the Belsan bombings, those ended up killing about 500 Russians. There was actually an attempt at the beginning of World War II, way back in 1936, which a lot of people are going to be like, wait a minute, World War II started in 1939. Well, that's for Europe. In Asia, it technically started in 1936 or so, just about that time, during the Marco Polo Bridge incident. But beyond that, during that time, the Chinese actually tried to find a way to justify a greater war with China before the Marco Polo Bridge incident, and it turns out that the Japanese actually planned on derailing a Japanese express train, and in the crash, because the train would be traveling at such a high speed, dozens, if not over 100 Japanese citizens riding this express train would have died somewhere inside of northern China or inside of Korea, which both of those were largely under control of Japan at the time. It was actually foiled by some sort of a journal. I forgot how this actually went, this part of the story, but the actual plot was foiled by some kind of a journalist or something along those lines, and for that reason, that didn't go forward, and then the actual provocation for the Second World War, at least inside of the East Asia area, was the Marco Polo Bridge incident. So still, kind of you can see the prevailing trend, at least in these two historical instances, that there was usually a mass casualty event that was going to be created to justify the beginning of a war. And 5 Russian civilians dying, while it's a pretty decent number, it's not an incredibly high number that would justify larger amounts of armed action. The public would find it very hard to start ordering a full mobilization of the nation based off of this kind of an attack. So I would have to say this is largely, to me, falling under complete incompetence, but at the same time, I also have a feeling that the Russians are still going to blame Ukraine because this level of incompetence would be impossible to explain to the public in any single way. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. But before we move on out of this segment and on into the rest of the news that we have today, actually inside of Ukraine on the battlefields, I want to make sure that we take a quick moment to address a couple of questions that have come in. And Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so it's time for the first super chat segment of the stream, and our first one here is going to go to a brand new super chatter on the stream. It is Hawk, and they put in a very massive $250 donation, which is the largest of the night. And huge shout out to you, Hawk, for supporting the channel in such a big way right off the bat. That's very impressive, and thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. And sadly, after all that, no comment to address. But thank you very much for that support. And also, if you're new to the entire channel, welcome to the LSA. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, a huge thanks to you so much for the support, Hawk. This is your first time supporting the channel ever. Actually, technically, I think by the end of it, it was like your 5th time supporting the channel because you threw in I think it was like 5 $50 super chats. But beyond that, I gotta thank you so much for enjoying this channel and helping it to keep on running in such a massive way. It's crazy to see that folks really enjoy this channel like you do, Hawk, and that people enjoy it so much, they want to help it to keep on running. We run the stream ad-free and sponsor-free. There's not a single ad that runs on any of our streams, and just in case of people are doubting that, because we always like to try and be as transparent as possible here, I'll show y'all something that actually kind of got me a little bit miffed a couple of days ago as well. But y'all will see that all of our streams do not run ads. This one actually got age restricted. it's a mystery as to why, but it got age restricted. This one got copyrighted because copyrighted music played in it. But beyond that, none of them have ads running on them at all. This one also got copyrighted as well, and this one did as well. That's why we're kind of like protective about playing any kind of music on stream, because usually it's almost always copyrighted and we don't want ads running on the stream. Even if we chose not to run them and they're someone else's, we still don't want their ads on our streams. But nevertheless, our streams are ad-free and sponsor-free. The only way that we keep these things running is through viewer support, which helps us to be able to do this as a full-time job, because it's how we make our living. And I got to thank you massively once again for the support, Hawk. While you didn't throw in a comment, you're helping us to make a load of comments on stream and helping us to also get to talk to loads of people every single night. At the peak tonight, there was about 9.7 thousand people here. That's a pretty high number. What's even crazier, and I you know what, Matthew? I think I'm actually going to show everyone this, because this one is actually really crazy, because the news stats came out for, I believe it was yesterday or something like that. Let me go see. So let's see here. Hang on, everyone. I gotta scroll down here on this thing so that I can try and get to it. Oh, dang it, Matthew! They updated the freaking number. So yeah, it's changed now, sadly. Let me see where we were last night, because I was going to show y'all something that blew me away, blew Matthew away, really blew us all away. So I'll tell y'all what happened, because there's no other way for me to show it, because now the numbers have updated, the whole graph's updated. But on, I think it was Wednesday night of this stream, we reached about 14.3 thousand live viewers. We actually ended up beating out the live streams of, let's see, the Young Turks, Ben Shapiro, and Donald Trump. We actually ended up beating every single one of them in live stream viewership that night. It's pretty crazy to see something like that, considering that those people, and I know a lot of people are probably going to be like, who's Ben Shapiro and who's the Young Turks? I had to make sure that I included both sides, because as you all know, one person's from one side, the Young Turks are from the other. Had to include both of them, because we technically beat both of them in terms of live stream viewership, and we also beat a presidential candidate, which is pretty insane to see that something like that happened. And I got to say that we're very proud of that, because this channel in its
Candidate, aren't you?
Say what?
You're a presidential candidate, aren't you?
Of course I am. Of course I'm a presidential candidate in 2040. But still, I got to give a huge thanks to everyone who enjoys this channel and watches it. It's crazy to see that this channel has grown to the heights that we've been able. You know what? I actually did, Matthew. I'm going to send this over Discord. I actually did take a picture of that and on my phone, and I sent it to Matthew, because I was like, wow, look at that. Isn't that cool? So let me see if I can send this here. And let's see here. Here we go. There we go. Also, I just noticed, man, we beat Blue Origin stream, like Jeff Bezos' space company. We beat that stream too. So let me pop this up.
That rocket that looks like you know.
Get your hands off my weenus! Yeah, it looks
yeah,
like that.
basically.
But here we go. Here it is. We are up here at number 49. There is a presidential candidate right there at number 55. There is Ben Shapiro at number 59, and then there's Blue Origin right below him. We beat them all, like, crazily enough. And also some people are probably going to be wondering, well, is that like a bot account that just has the name of the presidential candidate? No. That is actually, because I checked, that is actually the official YouTube account of that person. Like, that is it. It has like 3 million subs or something like that. But that is it, which is crazy to think that we beat all of them. Like, and even this number's off, because it was actually 14.4, just about. It was like 14,377 was our actual peak, but Playboard only counted as 14,059. But that's still crazy to see that we beat all of these people. And there were loads others that were further down the list as well. I think there was CBS and ABC who were below us as well on that chart that day. It's insane to see something like that. But still, I got to thank everyone for always enjoying this channel and always being here with us. I got to thank you, Hawk, for supporting this channel and helping it to be possible for us to do this as a job, because it helps us to continue to work harder and harder every single day to continue to grow this channel larger and larger and get our kind of news coverage out there, and also to get our kind of an idea on how this side of things should work out here on the internet, because we're the only people on the internet who have a no politics rule in our channel. We do not pick a political side on this channel, and we also do not speak about domestic political issues in any major form, or at least any mainstream form, that is. But still, I gotta say, huge thanks once again, Hawk. It is a wonderful thing that folks continue to support this channel and helping to keep on running.
Oh, we're getting lag blasted.
Oh man, what do you know? What do you know? Isn't that great? Oh, we are. Look at that. Man, that's
We
terrible.
have less than 1 bar. Less than 1 bar of the American worker. We have less than 1.
The top 1% of all the YouTube channels own half of the Wi-Fi bars. We need, but still, beyond that, I gotta say, huge thanks to you once again, Hawk. Huge thanks to everyone who continues to watch this channel, because together we are actually going to be making a massive, well, we've already made a massive platform together, and it's just really cool to see that we continue to grow larger and larger as a channel. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And while you may have not thrown in a comment, you continue to help this channel to keep on running and continue to ensure that the phrase, "The Lee Spring Army will never die," will make sure that it never truly dies. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our second Super Chat support of the night is going to go to Gary Robbins, who's a longtime channel legend, a long-lasting legend. And then Gary put in a $100 donation, and thank you very much, Gary, for always supporting the channel as well. Big league, we appreciate it. He said, "Thank you for being there day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year."
And I gotta say, thank you for the massive support, Gary Robinson. Thank you for enjoying our long-lasting work ethic, because we really do have one hell of a work ethic. I'll tell you that. Working 3 years straight nearly on this channel, pretty much every single day, without a break. It's really wild to think about that, especially looking in retrospect now that we finally have a vacation lined up here and we're actually going to be taking a few days off. It is crazy to think that we've been doing this nonstop for about 3 years. We've been on
3 years
here.
down, bliat, 20 more to go.
Yeah, I mean it's it's crazy, man. This is actually an insane thing to think about. Not really that we've worked that much, but how much has come out of it and how far the channel has gone as a result of that. It's crazy to me, because right now we're sitting at 270,000 subscribers. We're actually sitting around 270,700 subscribers, but we are not that far away from 300,000 subs. It wasn't that long ago that we were just at 150, and it wasn't that long ago that we were at 100. You know, it's really crazy to see that this channel has been growing the way it has been, and I got to thank everyone who's been around and enjoying the amount of work we put into this thing, really appreciating our work ethic, because it means a lot to us that folks have gathered around and listened to us talk. I would still be here doing all of my monologues on the news, and Matthew and me would still be running this thing, and we'd still be doing our rabbit holes on all kinds of things, mostly trains these days, but all kinds of things for that matter. We would be talking about them. We'd still be doing them, whether there was tens of thousands of people here or just a few hundred. We would still be doing the exact same thing. I just thank everyone for joining us along the way and being here with us tonight and enjoying the stream in huge numbers. I don't know why y'all do. I know y'all will give the answers as to why y'all do, just because I say that, but I still will never comprehend how people truly do enjoy this channel, because to everyone who knows me, I'm just me. I mean, I'm just Andrew. I just do this. I talk this way. People get tired of it. I do it enough. You hear so much history, you get tired of history around me. And it's crazy to think that y'all actually appreciate a lot of what we have to say, because it really does mean a lot to me. I know it personally means a load to me. I know it means a lot to Matthew as well. But just speaking on my personal level, it means an unbelievable deal to me. I don't even think anyone, no matter how well I'm able to get it across, I don't think anyone will ever be able to truly understand how much it means to me and how much I appreciate y'all being here with me every single night as I cover the news. And I also got to give a big thanks for Matthew, because he's also here with me every single night, not only helping me to cover the news, but actually making sure that a lot of the behind the scenes stuff keeps working right while we're on air. But still, huge thanks once again to you in helping this channel to keep on running, Gary Robbins, and thank you for that massive support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the Ukrainian frontline news.
All right, so the last one right here of the segment is going to go to Gunfox61, who's a channel legend, by the way. Channel legend, long-lasting legend. He puts in a $50 donation as well. Thank you very much, Gunfox, for the support. And he's been doing something here for a while that I've noticed, that today in history, and he's got another one today. He says,
Hey!
today in history, 1983, the STS-8, the Space Shuttle Challenger, takes off on the first night of launch of the shuttle program, and that the STS-41-D, the Space Shuttle Discovery, takes off on its maiden voyage. And also, question from the chat.
And I thank you so much for the support, Gunfox61. And today sounds like NASA Day. And what better way to talk about NASA than to talk about probably one of the most interesting space vehicles to ever lift off, the Space Shuttle. Probably the pride of the American NASA fleet, probably more famously known, honestly, than the Saturn V. This thing was NASA's vehicle. Now, was it a good vehicle? Economically, not really. It was actually a money pit, like an endless money pit. But was it cool as hell? You bet. Like, this was like the coolest thing to ever go to space. I think the Starship will take that title in time. I don't know when that will be, but in time, the Starship will eventually take the title as probably one of the coolest things that ever went to space. But you just can't top this thing. I mean, it really was amazing. It was incredible. I mean, it was an actual space vehicle that could be launched. It carried an internal payload. It could carry quite a significant one at that. It had an operational robot arm that could help out with conducting actual repair and maintenance missions, and also orbiting satellites that it carried into space. It was able to be used as a experiments bay, conducting all kinds of experiments inside of the confines of the shuttle. It was able to carry 7 people. And what's even crazier is that this was the first vehicle ever put into use anywhere in the world that was reusable. A reusable space vehicle. Before the space shuttle existed, that concept was completely foreign to everyone. There was no such thing as a reusable space vehicle until the space shuttle. And it's crazy to think that America designed this thing. It was 100% American through and through. It is a pride of American space exploration and scientific progress. And it really is crazy to think that for quite a long time we had these things pretty much going regularly into space. You know, all the way through different times in history, honestly, because I believe at the first time this thing was launched, and let me make sure. Let's see here. I need to find. Let's see. Well, we know it's retired. When was the first flight of this thing? The first flight was in 1981, which was the orbital test flights. But from 1981 to 2011, which is roughly 30 years, this thing was going to space. It was in space while the Mir space station was still orbiting. It was in space before the International Space Station was even a concept. And it was around well after the International Space Station had practically been completed. And it's just crazy to think that this thing lasted so long. But of course, if you actually know anything about the space shuttle program, you'll know that NASA really hated this thing and was trying to get rid of it immediately because it was so expensive to maintain. Especially after a couple of the disasters, like the Challenger disaster, they started to have to pretty much take apart the entire space shuttle and reassemble it every single time before it went back to space to make sure that it wasn't going to, you know, have a tile fall off or explode or anything like that again. And so then it ended up being exorbitantly expensive to run and operate this thing. But the fact that it even worked at all is pretty impressive. And it kind of, you know, was what spurned the idea of reusability in the space industry. And that's why we see that SpaceX nowadays has reusable rockets literally out of the kazoo. It's pretty much all that SpaceX uses.
Those Elons are so cool, like the way they come back down and like put the little like landing gear down, stuff like that, like just falling out of the sky, and somehow they're able to land upright. That is so cool, like those rockets. And also, by the way, I know they're not called Elons, but I don't know the exact name of the rocket, but
Falcon
it's
9.
super cool, man. Like it's the Falcon 9, you said?
Mm-hmm. And then there's the Super Heavy as well, I think it's called.
Yeah, it's just so cool. Like in the process they had to go through to actually get that thing to actually land upright was just insane. The amount of like trial and error they had to do to get that right. Like trying to land the thing on those drone boats, like day after day after day, was just crazy. Like I still can't believe when I see the thing landing. It's a feat of engineering by far.
Yeah, and also this is starting to greatly reduce the cost of space travel because instead of having to pretty much mark off the entire rocket as a loss, the rocket can actually be reused over and over and over again. So that's pretty cool. You know, also let me see here, I think it's not the Super Heavy, it's the Falcon Heavy. This one right here. This is the one that really shocked the world when all three of the lower stages of the Falcon Heavy ended up successfully landing at their pads at Cape Canaveral a couple of years back. This was really impressive to see, and now they are working on the Starship project, which I'll show y'all right here. Many people will know about this a little bit. So let me see. No, not this. Damn. Let me go. Let's see. What's the company called? SpaceX. There we go. Sorry, everyone. Like, honestly, we're a little tired tonight, and so I'm really trying to keep it together. But let's see. The SpaceX Star. Here we go. So this is a Starship. It's going to be the largest space vehicle to ever take to space. Also, the amount of tonnage and weight that this thing can carry in cargo is extreme as well. It's a pretty impressive idea. And it looks like it's actually starting to make ground, and it's actually starting to move forward. Now, of course, some people are saying it's a joke and it's not that great. I'm holding out a lot of hope for this thing. I think it's actually going to be massively impressive. And let's see here. What is the amount of cargo that this thing can carry? Do they even say? Let's see.
Also, by the way, have you seen like the actual scale of that thing? Like that Starship is massive. Like I didn't understand how large the thing was until I saw it side by side with some other vehicles. That thing is humongous.
Yeah, it is humongous. And I'm trying to see.
Humongous.
I'm trying to see if I can actually find like a little scale. Nope, I can't. So let me go and put the SpaceX Starship scale comparison. Let me take this off screen really quickly and look for it. SpaceX Starship and let's see, scale. So here we go. This will give kind of everyone a good idea on how big this thing really is. So that's not a good one. Let me see here if I can find another one. Here we go. This is probably the best one. So this is the Starship versus some of the more famous rockets that have taken to flight. The Soyuz, the Falcon 9, the Saturn V, the SLS, which will supposedly take astronauts back to the moon and eventually on the Artemis missions to Mars. And then you also have the Starship over here. This is the biggest one by far, and it's also the biggest one in internal payload that's ever been put to flight ever. It will actually beat out the Space Shuttle as well, which is pretty cool. I mean, that's pretty impressive in its own right. Now, I know a lot of people, I'm going to say this really quickly because a lot of people are going to diss on Elon, but the thing is that I don't let personal convictions hold back my idea or belief in scientific progress, and I do believe that there is a lot of technological and scientific progress to be made in the Starship program. Whether you like Elon or not, I wouldn't let opinions or judgments of a person cloud what kind of an innovation and success a company that this person is attached to is able to succeed in. And it's a massive American accomplishment, considering that the entirety of SpaceX is once again made up of American rocket scientists and engineers. A lot of people
also, you got to give it to him. You got to give it to Elon a little bit because, you know, he does get on people's nerves from time to time, but everybody does to some extent. But you got to give it to him because without the funding that SpaceX had and also the amount of work that he put into trying to get SpaceX off the ground, none of this stuff would have probably happened because it takes one person at the top to like spearhead the whole thing. Of course, it's all the really smart engineers below him that actually get the heavy work done. That's who really does the work. But without the person at the top leading the way, it would have never happened. And you got to admit, SpaceX is one of the top companies in the United States doing rocket work and space work like that. And for example, look at Boeing, who's been around forever. They're having a hard time right now even getting the astronauts off the space station. And SpaceX doesn't have that problem, at least right now. So, you know, it's you got to give them his credit.
Yeah, you got to give credit where credit's due. And we do have to admit, if this thing ever ends up successfully conducting an orbital test and ends up re-entering the atmosphere and landing successfully, this will be the largest spacecraft to have ever gone to flight in human history. Period. There's no other spacefaring vessel that even gets close to this thing in size and ability for the amount of cargo that it can carry. And I've actually heard from Gunfox 61 that the Starship can actually carry up to 45,000 pounds, or about 20 tons. Well, actually, it'd be more than 20 tons. It would be about 23 tons of raw cargo and materials into space, which beats out a lot because I believe, if I'm correct, the largest, let's see, how much could the space shuttle carry? So let's see here. Space Shuttle's payload capacity was up to 65,000 pounds. Interesting. So I'd have to... Let's see. How much can the Starship carry? How much can the Starship carry? 150 metric tons. Wow.
Damn.
Let's see here.
How much does that phallic shaped object that Blue Origin makes? How much does it carry? Does it carry anything, or is it just people?
It can't carry anything but people. So it can carry 6 passengers. So add together, like, the average weight of a person is like 190, 180 pounds maybe. So add together 180 times 6. That's your answer. So practically nothing. And it's not even orbital, it's suborbital.
Or one Chris's mom.
Oh! Yeah, that's true too. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, since we had a little moment on space. But a big thanks to you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping it keep on running, Gunfox. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And we will make sure to get a question from the chat before we move on out and into the rest of the news. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so this question from the chat is going to go to Backhoe Mafia, who said, "I have a question from the chat," and let's take it. He said, "Would flamethrowers be useful in today's trench combat?"
Flamethrowers would be useful in some instances. Really, incendiaries of any sort would be useful, but there is a lot of questionability on using incendiary weapons in modern combat against enemy soldiers. A lot of people don't really like the idea of that because you're literally burning people alive, but technically, if we're throwing away the morality side of things, or the morality argument, it would be wildly effective in trench warfare to use something like a flamethrower. So, you know, it kind of depends. Also, by the way, really quickly, it wouldn't actually make a lot of sense to use it in the trench, like walking through the trench and then smoking people with it. That wouldn't really make that much sense. It's actually walking atop the trench on one of its berms and then looking into dugouts and just firing the flamethrower into a dugout. That's kind of how the flamethrower is best used in trench warfare, but still at that, it's like, do you really want to like take a whole bunch of trapped people and then burn them alive? Most people wouldn't. And usually in World War I, which is where a lot of the horror stories of the flamethrower came into being, from the stormtroopers and also from the French as well, it wasn't really like the most humane thing. People truly just got seared, well, burned to death like they were a steak or something along those lines. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you once again, Gunfox, for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're now moving on into our Ukraine war news, as we got some pretty interesting statements that the commander of the Air Force was fired today by President Zelensky. According to the information that we have, Zelensky had just fired several hours ago Mykola Olenchuk from the post of the commander of the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. And some have been speculating that it was about the recent F-16 crash, but we don't really have any clear answers on that. He was fired, and it was a pretty cut and dry ordeal. But a lot of people have been throwing in their thoughts and opinions at the moment on this F-16 crash and whether that led to the firing of the commander of the Ukrainian Air Force or not. And Matthew, what are people thinking, and what are you thinking about it too?
So it looks like about 57% of the audience said the firing of the commander of the Ukrainian Air Force is connected with the F-16 crash, while 26% said I need more info, and 9% said it's not connected to the F-16 crash whatsoever. And I would have to say that I'm starting to get the impression, based on the lack of information about the crash that occurred a day ago, that unfortunately took the life of Moonfish, a Ukrainian pilot who piloted the F-16, I think something really bad might have happened with that crash. And the fact that he was not able to eject, that indicates that something could have been a little bit odd with the way that plane went down and the pilot was killed. So I think this is indeed connected with it. I'm not sure if we'll ever know the full details as to what went wrong or what happened with this crash, but I'm starting to get the impression that maybe there might have been, perhaps, and this is just speculation by the way, maybe some friendly fire or maybe an in-air accident or something like that, because for Zelensky to sack the commander of the Ukrainian Air Force that abruptly after that crash occurred, I really couldn't see a scenario where that was not connected. So I'm with the 56%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it probably was connected to the F-16 crash. We're not entirely certain, but it seems like it would be the most likely option, considering that it's correlating that that crash happened and then he was fired. So it seems as though the two may be related just for the reason of the span of time in between the two. It's not really that long. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And moving on from that and into our location unknowns, we were also able to see the picture of the month. This is titled August in Ukraine. while it's pretty grainy and we could use more pixels, it is pretty cool looking. So moving on from
That's
that,
pretty neat.
yeah, it's pretty cool. And so moving on from that, we also got to see some new recruits in training in the Ukrainian army. We got to see this guy here running around. We got to see this guy right here running around. We got to see this guy right here running around. We got to see this guy right here putting on a helmet. He's actually not running around. One of the few pictures in this slew where no one was running around. But we also got to see a Ukrainian MiG-29 shoot down a Shahed 136 with an R-73 as some kind of weird music starts playing in the background. But we can see the camera there panning over. And there goes the R-73. Oh, dead on the nail. Oh my goodness. Impact. Pretty cool. Moving
Let's
on.
see here. I also saw in the live chat real quick on the topic of the F-16 that went down that was Ukraine's F-16. I saw Melanie say in the live chat that the Patriot system, meaning Ukraine's Patriot systems, does not target the aircraft. It targets the cockpit. And that would be one explanation why the pilot could not eject. Enforcer, do you know right off the bat, is that true? Like real quick, is that a true statement about the Patriot? I don't know personally.
I wouldn't know that for certain. I just know that the missile is a proximity missile, meaning that it explodes when it gets close enough to the aircraft. It's not a direct impact or a kinetic missile. So I'm not really sure if that means it kills the pilot. Now, I do know of some systems like the Skynex. Its specific Orlikon rounds are actually designed to pretty much shred the pilot in the cockpit when they explode, because they're designed to where they actually explode above the cockpit and they pretty much project a giant field of shrapnel straight down the aircraft and everything around it. So I don't know if the Patriot has like a similar design process with how the missiles work, but usually I would say it doesn't really matter where the missile hits, because it's not necessarily about killing the pilot. It's more so about destroying the plane. But that may be how it works, because maybe we don't want them to ever get their pilots back alive, so they just end up taking out the pilot too, and that's how the missile is designed. Not entirely sure on that.
Yeah, I gotta say that I really hate to think this, but we do know for a fact that Ukraine has been using the F-16 to shoot down incoming drones and missiles that Russia's been firing at the Ukrainian territory. That's been pretty much the primary purpose of the F-16s ever since they've gotten them. And they sent a lot of drones in that Russia did to Ukraine. And I'm wondering that maybe they got mixed up with trying to shoot everything down. They might have accidentally targeted their own jet. Because that is possible. While they're trying to shoot down so many incoming hostile targets, they could get mixed up and end up shooting the wrong thing down. And that's a possibility, because, you know, it's just hard to believe. It's like, how did they lose the F-16 that quick? The thing's not even on the front lines. And what's even weirder, like I said, is the pilot was not able to eject on time, which is just another, like, piece of the puzzle. I see some people saying in the live chat that maybe it was sabotage or something like that. That is also possible. Pretty much everything's possible right now. We have no information except for basically speculation and knowing that the guy just got fired as the commander of the Ukrainian Air Force. But it could be anything. I'm sort of leaning toward the theory it might have been friendly fire. And, you know, I'm not going to bash the Ukrainian Air Force for that. Accidents do happen, but I just don't know. We really need more details, and I don't know if we'll ever get them, if we'll ever get the details.
And that's true. We're not entirely sure, but we'll have to try and find out and see. And I see a lot of people saying that it does target the cockpit, so we will be taking that at face value at this point. But moving on from that, we also got to see the Russian casualty report as well. And oh, the losses were pretty good.
Dang, 2 Bobcats, man. It's good to see.
Man, it's wonderful to see. And 1,200 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 23 APCs, 57 supply trucks, 3 main battle tanks, 23 artillery systems, 84 drones, 1 MLRS, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. The losses were pretty good today, and it's great to know that the Ukrainians continue to inflict them. Moving on from that and into the Vovchansk front, we did get to see a little bit of a clip of a firefight going on in between the Sheikh Mansour and a couple of enemy Russian forces in the distance. This clip is 11 minutes long, so we're going to have to end up cutting it down a little bit in length, but still, here is some of it. We hear firefights going on in the distance as they continue to move forward towards the fight. And we see them now moving through the woods in their vehicles. Oh, Oh, black tip ammo. Nice, nice. I like to see it.
Once again, using the ARs, not the AK.
It's simply because it's the best. Now see them moving forward a little bit more, crossing the street quickly. Also, Eric Kress, by the way, John Kirby said in 48 to 72 hours, the Iranians were going to attack Israel. It's now been 72 hours, and the attack never came. So, once again, I was on the money. It's just like, we do better than the Department of State, Matthew. Let's get it.
Now keep in mind, people. I just want to keep you all abreast of the situation. It's very tense in the Middle East right now. It could go off in the next 24 hours. You just never know. But we'll have to keep you up to date with the latest news and all that good stuff and everything, and hope that the worst doesn't happen.
Man, that was a perfect impression, man. I'm telling you.
It actually wasn't a perfect impression. It's hard to really nail that political circle talk. It's hard to get it down, but y'all know what I'm talking about.
We see them continuing to wander around.
They have a microwave. That's nice. It's a good thing to have.
I'm not sure if that's theirs or if that's the microwave of the prior tenant. Oh, Dougie.
Oh.
Hello, Dougie. Seems like a very nice doggy. Oh, look at the doggy. Oh, that's a precious doggy.
The Ukrainians don't trust it, really. They're not sure about him.
It's being very nice. Oh, look at it. Oh, we're gonna have to mute that.
Is that a Bren or a Scar?
That's a Bren right there. CZ Bren.
They're replicas.
Man, we can see them now hanging out. We're gonna skip forward just a... Oh, actually, no. They're actually starting to fire at them. Sounds like the building might be taking fire. This appears to be some kind of a marksman team we're watching right here. Now see him getting out of the building, handing him the rifle here.
This house has built-in logs in the garage.
Man, Lincoln logs. But moving on from that and towards the end of the clip, because we can't show the entire thing. We're gonna have to mute that. Man, I swore I heard the same track in Iran like 3 weeks ago. You know, when they were moving the F4s around in the pits.
Yeah, when I heard it, I ran.
Man, when I hear a burglar in my house, I wreck.
Oh man, goodness.
Oh my goodness. Oh man.
These folks are getting more unhinged by the day.
We see them firing on these Russians. My goodness, they are laying down that heat, Matthew. putting down that heat.
Is that music still blaring, or is it good to go?
Still
Oh.
blaring. Oh man, we can see them getting ready to fire the next AT weapon. They're just taking some time here. Come on, folks. Pop it on off. Vostril! Boosh! There we go.
You know, if there wasn't a war going on right here, it would be a nice field.
It would be. It would be a nice little picturesque scene. You can find scenes like these in the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia. But anyways, we can see them now wandering on around. I hate to see that little pupper disappeared. It was a really cute one. But they captured a passport. Some Russian equipment. Oh, huh. Well, you know, appears that Russian was taking a small nap at the time. But nevertheless, great to see that they're doing good work up there in that area. Moving on from that and down towards the area of tourney, we also got to see that the Russians apparently getting started off on a little tourney of their own today. Oh, excuse me. I didn't know we were playing Pac-Man here. Anyways, boosh! They got him. Dead on the nail. Impact. There goes the drone. To the depths of hell where it belongs. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. Actually, it's not. Hold up. Goosh! There we go. Hit it again. Drop down to the ground a little bit more, but not good enough. Come on. Give it to him! Well, that's the end of that clip. Oh?
Something happened to it. I think it ran into a tree.
Oh, it crashed. We're gonna crash! But with that, we're now moving on from that clip and down into the Pokrovsk direction, because there is some interesting stuff happening down here. We got a picture of the Ukrainian artillery crew. I'm the 151st, a separate mechanized brigade of the Ukrainian army. Look at them go. Reduced charge, like a reduced diet, something that Chris's mom is unfamiliar with, but we did get to see the SPG right here. Great to see. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also get to see a MiG-29 using some GBUs, American-provided GBUs. Good GBUs, long-lasting GBUs. And look at those GBU-39s right there. They are jacking them up. Mounting them.
You can tell these guys right here, they're very serious about their job. That's why the missiles are always able to fire so good every time. That guy right there looks American. Am I not mistaken?
Oh, Matthew, you're just imagining
Go
things.
back. Go back to that for a second. That guy looked American.
This guy?
I think that guy might look American to me.
Matthew, everyone looks American. Americans are from all over the world. Everyone's an American.
He kind of has that American look, if you know what I mean. He looks like an American military soldier for some reason. There's something about him.
I'm sure it's nothing. But there goes the MiG. And look at that, low flying, and oh, they had to do the gravity drop. Oh, this is actually, sorry everyone, this is actually around the area of Kursk that this video was filmed. Dang, they took it out. Look at that, impressive. Oh, these are all clips from Kursk. Interesting. Anyways, guess they're showing us now how that was done back in the day. Anyways, moving on from that, on into our next clip around the area, Karlivka. We also get to see that the Russians have captured most of Karlivka up to the Vovcha River. And so, check this out right here. Alright, we apparently got some discovery music. This is where the main character finds themselves in the middle of the climax of the story. Oh, and there's our Russian. The Ukrainians retreated to the western side of the Vovcha River, so that way there was an actual natural barrier in between them and the Russians, and it would make it a lot more difficult for the Russians to advance beyond this point. But hey, I guess to the Russians, this is some major victory, right?
Oh, Bliat, he's waving the wrong flag, Bliat. You want to wave the white flag, not the red one. The red one means to die.
We want the white flag, the long-lasting flag, the flag of surrender, the flag of giving up.
He said, hip, hip, hooray! He's like, hit me now, hit me now!
Dude, he went, hooray! Yay! It's like, I don't know about that.
Bro's celebrating the small victories in life because the big one's about to come pretty quick.
Dude, what the hell does this guy think? Like, there's a victory rally going on here? Like, everyone's on the side of the streets clapping for him? This guy's literally living out some sort of deluded fantasy where he's like, and then they clapped, or something like that. It's like, dude, just plant the flag, get it over with, and shut up. Oh, and now they're firing into the air.
Wasting ammo, that's atypical.
And off they go. Heroes of the Russian Federation, everyone. But anyways, moving on from that clip and on into our next one, we did get to see that the 46th Brigade had a little bit of a different story to tell today, because they were bombing these very same Russians. Check this out. There's Karlivka again. But this time, things aren't so savory. There's the Russians. They're about to get blown up.
I agree with the person that said in the chat. It was Adam in the live chat. He said, send the man some Chipotle. Send him a big fat Chipotle burrito with the guac that's been sitting out all day long, and let's see what happens.
Oh, terrible things would happen. I think that would be a violation of the rules of war.
Man, you'd hear sounds you've never heard come out of a person if you gave him that burrito.
Man, I'm telling you, man, it'd be scary. Like, honestly, I wouldn't want to be around for it. And we see one of the vehicles is toasting. Here comes the other. Oh, give it to him, Leonard! And they really are. And the Ukrainians are just slamming them with the drones. I mean, they never get a break from these drones. They get so many drones, they're tired of drones. And look, even the Russians that aren't in the vehicles, they're getting hit too. Oh, dang, dead on hit from the Mando group.
Oh. Wow.
Oh my.
Look at that boiler.
Wow. Look at that. Look at that spoiler. Dude, when someone sits there and tells you the end of a movie before you've actually got to watch it for yourself, wow. Listen to that spoiler.
And classics. It's like a Vlasic, like a pickle.
Like a nice pickle, blade.
Or the Russian whistles.
Excuse me, do you know what the American whistles are? Dude, they did my boy Chekhov dirty in that movie, man. They had him drop off the side of an aircraft carrier and irreparably damage his brain. Like, it's like, dude, why'd y'all do him like this?
Man, if you're really thinking back about it in the Star Trek episodes, like the original Star Trek, they always treated, what's his name, Chekhov like he was stupid or something like that. Like, he was always like the stupid one or something. They were always acting like, oh, damn, that Chekhov or whatever. And he was always like the sort of like immature one or something. I don't know if it had anything to do with the fact that he was Russian.
Well, what's even goofier about that is that I don't even think he was Russian. I think he was German, wasn't he? He was like Walter Koenig. Like, isn't that like a German name?
I thought Chekhov was Russian. I thought it was also in the name and like the accent and everything.
Well, the character Matthew, he's supposedly Russian. He's actually Soviet, but the real guy, his name was Walter Marvin Koenig, and he's from Chicago, Illinois.
Yeah, I think he is of German heritage, like the actual guy, but he put on that fake Russian accent.
Yeah, so it's like, why in the world treat the guy like he's like goofy or stupid? I mean, like, really, he's German, if anything. He's not Soviet. But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to see the Ukrainian Special Forces operating at night. They grill them at night, and we can see right here the ribs dropping around the Kimber and Spit operating at night, because like many people, they do it at night. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on out of the Kimber and Spit, out of that area, and on up towards Kyiv, because we have the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 919 of the war. And so, without further ado, and so here's the speech. Speech!
І українці-українки зараз у Харкові тривають рятувальні операції в місцях влучання російських бомб. На жаль, є загиблі. Серед них дитина, дівчина Софія. Цієї осені їй би виповнилось 15 років. Мої співчуття рідним і близьким. Багато поранених, усім надається допомога. Рятувальники роблять все, щоб врятувати якнайбільше життів. Я дякую всім, хто задіяний, хто підтримує Харків, харків'ян. Це жахливі, підлі російські удари просто по будинках, по міському парку. Росія точно відповідатиме за все своє зло. Але кожен у світі має пам'ятати, що не дати злу діяти – це найбільш ефективна тактика. Потрібні рішення, які можуть ухвалити партнери. Саме ті країни, від яких залежить, чи є у нас здатність знищувати російську військову авіацію. І саме там, де вона базується. Саме там, де ліквідувати цих терористів та їхню авіацію можна найбільш результативно. Ми в Україні та наші друзі в світі не просто так кажемо про далекобійні рішення, про сильні рішення, про те, що може наблизити завершення цієї війни. Бо найголовніше для Путіна в його війнах – терор проти цивільних, залякування і знущання з людей. І саме так російське зло прийшло всюди – і в Сирію, і в Грузію, і в Україну. Це у них всюди однакова тактика терору. Треба поставити на цьому крапку. Це може забезпечити наша українська далекобійність, відповідна підтримка для наших сил оборони і системи ППО для України. Все те, про що ми говоримо з партнерами. Сьогодні було багато нарад, і саме щодо воєнної нашої роботи. Була доповідь керівника ГУР. Сьогодні ж провів засідання Ставки. Перше – це доповідь головкома щодо фронту. Передусім – Покровський напрямок. Торецьк. Оборона проти російських штурмів. Найбільш тяжкі напрямки. Дуже важливо, щоб дійсно на всіх рівнях в державі, хто до цього залучений, по максимуму працювали, щоб забезпечити нашу стійкість, наших воїнів. Я дякую усім, хто зараз дійсно результативно знищує окупанта і береже наші позиції. Я дякую кожному солдату та командиру, усім, хто виробляє, постачає необхідну зброю, снаряди, дрони. Також сьогодні головком доповів щодо розвитку наших дій в Курській області. Щоденний важливий для нас усіх результат там. Це поповнення обмінного фонду для України. І чим більше буде цього поповнення, тим більше наших людей зможе повернути з російського полону. Стратегічний наш пріоритет. Сьогодні ж на Ставці я заслухав доповіді щодо підготовки до навчального року. Це персональна відповідальність урядовців, і прем'єра, і міністрів. Максимум шкіл мають відкритися офлайн. І це передусім питання укриттів. Також готовність шкіл до наявних енергетичних викликів. Це пряме завдання уряду. Було сьогодні кілька важливих розмов щодо енергетики, наслідків ударів і захисту, який повинен бути. І неодноразово на засіданнях Ставки говорилося, вирішувалося, що робити, як діяти, чим забезпечити. Зараз час висновків. Я вирішив замінити командувача повітряних сил Збройних сил України. Я безмежно вдячний всім нашим військовим льотчикам, всім інженерам, всім воїнам мобільних вогневих груп, розрахунків, ППО. Усім, хто дійсно б'ється для України, для результату. І це потрібно так само на командному рівні. Ми повинні посилюватись і берегти людей, берегти особовий склад, берегти усіх наших воїнів. Слава Україні!
And
Herom Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 919 of the war. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the second segment of the stream, where we get to talk to all of y'all. And it's an incredibly fun segment, especially considering that about 50,000 people have been here tonight, and about 9.7 thousand people were here at the peak. Right now, there's about 7,000 people still here. And that's one hell of a number. And we'll be making sure to get to hopefully talk to as many of y'all as we can during this next question segment. And so, without further ado, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so jumping into our final question segment of the night. We've already gone through all of our polls, so we have no more of those to address, so we're jumping right into our Super Chat segment. And first up, we're going to have a $30 Super Chat from Jason Carney, huge support, and also huge shout out to John B. Rempel, who put in a 20, and also Natasha Millman, who also put in a 20 as well. And huge shout out to Jason, John, and Natasha for that support. Sadly, no comments to address on any of them, but we appreciate it very much. And Enforcer, What say you?
And I gotta give y'all a huge thanks to 3 of y'all, Jason, John, and Natasha, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. While y'all didn't throw in comments, the support means a lot and helps us to continue to make this channel possible on a day-to-day basis. I can't say enough how much that helps us out and behind the scenes, because it's really the only way we make our bread and butter to be able to keep running this channel as our full-time job. And if it wasn't for all of y'all enjoying this channel enough to find it worthwhile to support it and help it to keep being possible, we wouldn't be able to be here covering this news tonight right now. We wouldn't have been able to for the past 3 years. And so a huge thanks to y'all once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. But a huge thanks to the 3 of y'all once more.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here goes to Sean Heaton, who puts in a $22 donation. And thank you very much, Sean, as well for that support, while I nearly choked to death.
Yeah.
But he says, buy a car, and thanks for another great stream, and LSA.
And thank you for enjoying our great stream. I can't tell you enough how much it means that people really do appreciate and really greatly enjoy the streams that we run, Sean. It means a lot to us. And I got to thank you for wanting us to buy a car. And thank you so much for enjoying the stream tonight. I hope it was a great one. I actually found out in the middle of the stream because someone said, oh, the viewership's kind of low. It must be football. And then it hit me. I was like, oh, yeah, there's a football game going on tonight. Matthew, didn't you know that?
I actually did not know that. I know it's, I think this is Labor Day weekend, but honestly, the viewership's not low, man. We've had 51,000 people watch already.
I know, that's the crazy thing. Someone was like, it's kind of low. I mean, I guess if you were considering, the record-breaking numbers and, the tens of thousands normal nowadays, yeah, I guess it was a little low, but we still had about nearly 10,000 people here. I mean, that's crazy when you think about it. I mean, we're filling up the largest auditoriums in America with numbers like these. They're the biggest numbers. People have never seen numbers like them. They compare the pictures of the peak of the people here at our live stream versus our competitors, and they go, wow, that was a big crowd. Biggest ever seen. I mean, no one has ever seen a crowd that big. No one will ever see one that big again. I mean, it really is just the best. I mean, have you seen my hands? They're huge. But anyway, so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And still, thank you so much once again for support, Sean. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Live Oak, who puts in a $20 donation. And huge shout out to Live Oak for putting in that support. And that is their first ever super chat on live stream. I had to go back and look real quick to make sure. And it is their first ever one. So huge shout out to Live Oak for that support. They said, I appreciate the work ethic.
Hey, and thank you so much for appreciating our work ethic. I appreciate you for that. I love that people really do notice how much we work on this thing, because I feel like other people who do this really do this lackluster, they'll maybe do it whenever they want to or something like that. We do this pretty regularly. We do it like clockwork. I mean, if we were running a train company, the trains would, if we were running a railroad company, the trains would run on time, dagnabbit, every single time. And I gotta say, I'm proud of that personally. I can't wait for a vacation though. And speaking of which, it is time for me to once again plug that to all of y'all so that we all know when that is. So let me make sure I get the days up and I tell y'all when we're going to be on vacation and for how long. So do not expect live streams during these following days in September. September 14th, September 16th, actually, sorry, let me start that over again. September 14th, September 15th, September 16th, September 17th, and September 18th. We are kind of half and half right now on whether a stream will run on September 19th, as we will literally be coming back home that day, so we don't know how possible that will be to run a stream on the 19th, but you can be guaranteed that the stream will be running on the 20th again. So from the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th of September, there will be absolutely no live streams during that time. I want to make sure that y'all are ready for this, because I'm sure this is going to be a bit of a shock, because, we've, literally, there's never been a period where streams have not run for that long. I mean, even when I had the Wuhan Whirlybird, we were back on air in, 3 or 4 days after I got it, because we wanted to make sure to keep it running for all y'all. But I still want y'all to be prepared for this as best as possible, so that way y'all aren't just caught out of the blue, kind of blindsided by this and wondering what happened and where do we go. Is everyone okay? Is everyone alive? We are okay. We will be alive, and we will be having a really fun time, and hopefully you get to come back recharged and ready to go at this thing all over again. And so with that, I hope that does cover that topic fairly well, because while we have a great work ethic, and we've had one for a while, it's time for us to finally take a short little rest. Because, it's been 3 years. Like, we gotta take a rest, man. Like, we really do. We are absolutely exhausted behind the scenes these days. Like, I can't even put into words how exhausted we really are sometimes. Like, over the past few days, to be entirely honest, I have had so little energy, it's a struggle to even get the stream put together. And then running it's always fun, like getting on here and talking and stuff. But even still, I'm not sure, maybe some of y'all can tell I'm a little bit lower energy, but the energy bar is running low. Like, we finally have to recharge after about 3 years. So with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well, Live Oak. And thank you so much once again for your first super chat ever, and really appreciating the work ethic. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Panama Floyd, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Panama, for that support as well. Channel legend, longtime channel legend, by the way. And Panama says, shuttle was a half measure. An original plan was to launch an orbiter off the back of a hyperspeed aircraft, but the aircraft tech didn't exist. And look up the SD's orbital transport model rocket. We'd thought it would be that.
And let's see here. The superorbital transport from SD's rocket. Yes. No, I don't want to get 10% off. Thank you. Decline.
I'll take it.
I will take it, but beyond that, here it is. Interesting. I actually did not know that. That's interesting. Interesting, I'd have to say, Panama Floyd. Also, what does SD's have these days? Rockets by skill level I want. Master. Oh, dang, look at that, dude. They got the Skylab, the Saturn 1B, the Saturn 5. Dude, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Like, it even has, like, the nozzles and everything. Like, back when we tried to get into this stuff, they didn't have none of this, like, at all. How tall is this thing? Dang, it's pretty long. It's 43 inches. It's, like, 4 feet tall. Dude, you're, like, firing an actual... What?
Go ahead. Go ahead and finish what you're saying.
Dude, this thing is like firing off a Qassam rocket in southern Lebanon. This thing's freaking huge.
Yeah, it looks like it takes the large rocket engine too, the E-16 and the F-15. I think those are pretty damn big ones, like little mini rockets.
Let's see here. Size. Want the extra large. Oh yeah, those are the big ones. Like these are the, and they're all sold out too.
And they're also, like, freaking expensive. Like, to launch the thing once or twice is going to be like $30 a go.
Man, that's pretty freaking expensive. You know what's crazy, though, about, like, SD's rockets is that when you really think about them in their most, like, the most basic form, they're really just a firework that does not explode and looks kind of cool.
Yeah, basically so. I remember I shot one off one time. It was that little small one. Actually, it was actually not small, but it used the, like, mid-engines that they have. It was neat, but I remember, like, way back in the day, when I spent, like, I think it was, like, 35 or $40 on or something like that. That was some huge money back then. It was, like, spending, like, every dime I had to, like, launch an SD's rocket, and it really wasn't worth it, honestly, to me. It was kind of like, it was like 5 seconds of cool, and then it was like, oh, damn, now you got to, like, pack everything up, put it in the truck, and then head out with it. And it was cool, but it wasn't anything I would, like, make a whole, like, hobby out of or anything.
Yeah, and also it was such a short, it was not a long-lasting rocket launch. It was a very short one. Like, it lasted, like, maybe a minute, and then it was over. Like, from, like, launch to landing, it was maybe a minute. So it wasn't like this thing, like, wow, this is so cool. It was like, oh, that's it. It's over, and then that was kind of it. Like, honestly, RC planes seem to be a lot more enjoyable for the kind of money you put into it. And also another thing that seems enjoyable, we were talking about, like, the amount of cost versus the amount of time they spend. Although that's not really true these days from what I hear, is model railroading. Like, like RC planes or like trains. Like, I don't think anyone does RC boats much. Like, I think that's kind of like a really niche thing these days. Or RC cars. Those actually seem really neat too, with like the whole off-roading kind of thing that people do with them sometimes. But, at the same time, I don't know. It's a thing. I don't know about many of them though, because I've never really got to do any of them. But still, I hope that does address that fairly well. Pretty cool to share that, Panama Floyd. Two cheers. And that's pretty cool. Also, I hope you're doing well, Panama Floyd, because while I don't get to say a lot about this, I always see what folks are saying in the live chat, and I've seen that you've been talking lately about going through some pretty tough times with some things that you're kind of dealing with in your personal life of sort, not wanting to share too much and just put it on blast for everyone out there. But I hope that things are going well, and I hope that things are going to eventually start going on the up and up a lot better, because I hate to see when people have bad things to report about how their lives are going or how their health is or anything like that in the chat. And I always hate to see, especially for folks like you who've been around for a really long time. So thank you so much for throwing in a really interesting comment, actually telling me something I did not know. And I hope that things continue to get better and get on the mend for you, at least on the health side of things. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And I hope everything goes well myself, Panama. I hope everything goes good with the whole situation as well. I think I'm aware of the situation too, but if I've heard the correct thing. But also, thank you very much for the support. And also, moving on to our next one here, we have a $15 super chat from Historic Tasmanian. And thank you very much for the support as well, Historic. They said, have an Aussie's pie and love the work you do and have a great holiday. And don't forge Tviramite and eggs on toasty too yum.
Don't forge. Interesting. I will not forge. I will not forge. I will not work as a blacksmith. But an Aussie pie, you know what this looks like, Matthew? It looks like a small mincemeat pie. You know what I mean? Kind of like a, let me show it to you.
Marmite.
Not a Marmite. It's this thing.
That actually looks kind of good.
That actually looks really good. Man, people kind of diss on them, I guess, in America because we don't really have them much, which is meat pastries, but meat pastries are really, really good. I cannot stress it enough. Probably one of the best forms of pastry out there, because the sweet ones kind of all start to become the same after you have enough of them. The meat pastries, though, are truly fantastic stuff. I've never had an Aussie pie. I've had a let's see, I've had a pasty, which is like the Cornish equivalent of a Aussie meat pie that we're seeing right here, but it's from Cornwall in the UK. And I've also had a sausage roll, which is kind of like a generic kind of like a British sort of a meat pastry, but it's more like a corn dog. More like corn dog shaped, if you want to call it that, for my American viewers here. It's kind of like corn dog shaped, but it's filled with like beef, potatoes, onions. Really good stuff. I mean, it's delicious stuff when you have it. I would rant and rave over those things when we were over in the UK, because it was such a quick and easy snack you could grab on the side of the road too. You just get those things wherever, and they were always delicious. So I love this stuff. Chicken pot pie though, Greg. Never had a chicken pot pie I've really just adored. I really like the more richer meats in these kinds of pastries. I don't think chicken cuts it, or turkey for that matter. I think it's got to be like a beef or some sort of a cut of steak or something like that to really make these things incredibly good. At least to me, that's my personal preference. And also pork is really good in these things too. But yeah, chicken is all right. Just chicken pot pie though, I don't know. These have a really rich, thick crust too to them. It's like a more bready crust instead of the pie crust that you get with a chicken pot pie here in America. So I still like these. I like the concept of these things, and hopefully we will be able to have one here in the future, Historic Tasmanian. And also we will try. Maybe we'll try that with eggs. Maybe one day. Also, Matthew, look, it's a mini Aussie.
Oh, look at that. A mini Aussie.
That's that little, Matthew, that's that dog right there. This one is literally that dog all grown up, man, that I had to go out there with the AK and run away. That was extremely hostile. It was this dog.
That kind of looks like a scrapper a little bit.
It's not, well, these things look precious. I really think they're cute looking. And that one outside was pretty cute looking, if it didn't look like it was about to rip my head off the whole time I was, even getting to the door. I wouldn't have gone out there and been, mean to that dog like I had to end up being. But that damn dog, it was mean before I even walked outside. I walked up to the door because my mom was like, I'm like, what the hell's going on out there? On the camera, there's some dog. And I was like, what? And I was like, well, we can't have dogs in our yard because we don't know if they're, friendly or not. And if we let the corgis out, they could get hurt because they're little dogs. So I went up there to go see this dog, and before I even really got to the front door, this dog saw me through the glass in the front door and started like jumping, lunging at the door with like its teeth snarled up and like its back hairs raised, and was like trying to attack me before I even got close to the front door. So then at that point, I said, "Oh hell no, I'm not going out there with that dog like that, like this." So then I went and grabbed the AK, and then I went out there with the bayonet attached and everything because I was not going to get mauled by some dog on the front steps and be that schmuck, and then sit there and go, I wish that they could find it and, euthanize this dangerous dog. I was like, no, if I'm going out there and this dog gets a little too angry, it's not going to have that chance today because, it's not going to attack me like that and get away with it. But I ended up running it out of the yard, but it was actually one of those Australian Shepherd dogs, 100%, had the same coat and everything. But that little dog was a bastard. Like, it was. Like, I've never seen in my life, y'all, a dog that is that mean. Like, even like the pit bulls that you see on like movies, where they try and make them look super mean and stuff, the trained ones that, they train to look super mean for the movies. They didn't even get close to having the ferocity and anger that this little shepherd dog had in it. Like, it was just mean. I mean, that thing was pissed. And I was going to get that thing if it tried to get me. So like to tell you all what happened a little bit more in detail. So I went out the front door with the AK. Dog starts lunging at me. And I'm like, this thing's crazy. So what I did is I leveled the rifle straight at it with the bayonet, and I started like poking the bayonet towards. I wasn't like poking the dog with the bayonet, but I was like, like lunging forward and like kind of like sticking the bayonet out to get the thing to back up. So it started backing up slowly, but that thing kept on meaning it was not going to relent ground without a fight. Like, it would start lunging at me and stuff again. So I had to rack the rifle, and I hope that the noise of that alone would be enough to scare it to run off. It wasn't. It actually got angrier. And so at that point, I was like, hell or high water, this thing is not staying in the yard. Because if I walk inside and let that thing stay in the yard, who knows, it might stick around all day. And then we forget that the dog's out there or something. We let the corgis out, and then one of them gets mauled, or something, and it gets injured or killed. And I was like, I'm like, under no circumstances is this dog at this point staying in this yard. So eventually I ended up just bayonet charging the thing with the AK, and it ran off finally. But that thing was mean. And a lot of people are saying it sounds like it has rabies. May have rabies. I don't know. We don't even know where that dog came from, and thank the Lord it's never come back, because ever since then I've been carrying around an M1 Garand with a 16-inch long bayonet, just waiting for the moment this thing will return, because that thing's not staying in this yard. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And some people are asking, did I get bit? Did I get rabies? No, I'm fine. I'm just kidding with y'all. It didn't touch me at all. Thank goodness, because that thing was mean. And it sounds like a lot of people are saying it does sound like it was rabid. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running his toward Tasmanian. Didn't know that would bring me about to once again remembering that crazy dog. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next super chat here, we have one from Heather Fitzgibbon, the longtime channel legend who put in a $10 donation, and huge shout out to you, Heather, for that support as well. And sadly, no comment to address, but in honor of Heather's super chat here, we're going to address the poll that's currently running. It says, if you lived in a fallout shelter and could only eat one food, which food would you choose? First place is New York pizza with 29%. Second place is British Shepherd's beef pie at 28%. Third place is steak kebabs and peppers at 25%. And fourth place is orange chicken and fried rice at 19%. And on this one, I'd have to say, my first option would probably be, honestly, the steak kebabs and the peppers, because it sounds healthy. My second option would be the New York pizza. The third option would honestly be a toss-up between the shepherd's pie and the orange chicken, because I don't really care too much for either one. They're good, but they're not my favorite. So that's my order. But Enforcer, what say you?
What the hell do you mean, Matthew? You love that shepherd's pie that Mama cooked not too long ago.
It's good, but I wouldn't pick it to eat if I had to keep eating it.
What the hell? Anyways, I don't know what the hell that's about. But I'm just kidding with you. I would say, in my opinion, steak kebabs would be last. Just because, I don't know. Recently I had steak kebabs. The best way to explain it, they were really dry. Seasoning was interesting on, but they were pretty dry. And if I had to sit there and think that I had to eat that one food for a very long period of time, I'd probably vomit. I'd start dry heaving at some point before too long. Let's see here. Orange chicken and fried rice. Orange chicken is good, but fried rice gets pretty mundane even just eating a plate of it. Like, by the time you get towards the end of all the fried rice, it's like, can I have any more fried rice? No, I can't. I'm about to start throwing the stuff up because it's getting a little bit mundane. New York pizza, I love New York pizza. Like, I really love any kind of pizza. Pizza's great. I never disagree with a pizza. I always think all pizzas are created equal in the eyes of our great Lord and Savior. And so for that reason, pizza would be my number one. British Shepherd's lamb pie, actually, because it's not made with beef, man. It was made with lamb.
This is the beef one. I'm talking about the beef one.
Well, I mean, the beef one's good. I think the lamb's better because lamb meat has a little bit more of like a tanginess to it, sort of a deal, and I think that tastes better with that kind of a pie. So I would say that the beef shepherd's pie would come in second. The orange chicken would come in third. The kebabs would come in fourth. Pizza would come in a good strong first. And so with that, I hope that does address that quite well indeed, as a matter of fact. And before we move on to the next one, Ryan Peacock actually brought up a fact, man. He said, Andrew told me that. And it's true, I did tell him that because this is a really cool fact about the Corgi. The Corgi is bred as a herding dog, and it's actually a cattle herding dog specifically, which is so weird to think about. Like, this tiny little dog herding giant cattle. But that's also why their tails are docked. Like, all Corgis are pretty much tailless. It's because in their original profession, which is being a cattle herding dog, tails are a bit of a nuisance. They can actually get the dog severely injured or killed because the tail could get stamped on, and then, the dog's pretty much pinned down. But Corgis do look precious with their little tails. They look like foxes. But beyond that, most Corgis have no tail. Our Corgis look kind of like this with just like the docked tail. But beyond that, these things are bred, just purebred cattle herding dogs. You have to have a bit of them, but this is also why they bite ankles. A lot of people who run into Corgis that aren't familiar with them, they'll notice that they nip at the ankles. It's a genetic thing. They nip at cattle ankles to get them moving because they can't work off of raw intimidation, kind of like slightly smaller dogs would, although all herding dogs do nip. Corgis nip a lot more because of their size, and it's kind of required for them to instill enough of a motivating factor in the cattle to get them moving. So Corgis nip a lot more than really most other herding dogs.
I'm always getting nipped by Sheba specifically. Very bad nipper. Always doing the nipping. Like, no matter what's going on, it's like if it's a hand or something like that, it's always like chomp chomp. It's like, damn. It's like they really do have that like stuff in their breed.
They really do. They nip a lot. Sometimes they nip as a sign of affection or aggravation or something, but they have a nip for everything, really. But Corgis are the sweetest. And also, another cool thing is that the Corgi actually comes from the Swedish Valhund. We don't really know, I don't think anyone really knows what the other dog, the Corgi, was mixed with, but the Swedish Valhund is the one of the main genetic contributors to the modern Corgi. The Swedish Valhund is from Sweden, and it was actually brought to Wales by the Viking invasions of the 9th and 10th centuries. And during that time, the Swedish Valhund started to become popular, at least around the area of Pembrokeshire in southern Wales, where a lot of the Vikings ended up kind of dwelling for a bit. And then through some crossbreeding, the Corgi ended up coming out of the whole mix. And then the Swedish Valhund kind of ended up dying off in Wales. Like, there are no Swedish Valhunds that were historically found in Wales beyond the period where the Corgi came into being. The Corgi became the dog, and then the Swedish Valhund kind of disappeared and only exists in Sweden. This dog is also a lot more rare in number than the Corgi these days. But the Valhund is really cool looking. It literally just looks like a small midget wolf. Like, it's neat.
I don't like that thing, I'll be honest with you.
I think it's cool, me personally. I think they're pretty neat. Like, they just look like little wolf Corgis.
I'm not my type of dog, I don't think.
But man, there are so many different kinds of Corgis that you can just get around. You can really appreciate them, You got the Pembroke Corgis, you got the Cardigan Welsh Corgis right here. These things actually look pretty cute, like with the rounded ears instead of the pointed ears. But let's see here, what else? I'm trying to think where. So this is a semi-toasted Corgi. but I'm looking for the toasted. Oh, here we go. This is the burnt corgi. Like 100% burnt because it has the tricolor. And they say that the corgis with the red and white coat are toasted. These are burnt. And then there's another kind that's like undercooked or something like that. But I just love these dogs. I think they're some of the best in the world. Once you have one, you can't ever have any other kind of a dog. They're just the sweetest dogs ever. And we just got our corgis back today. We missed a little things. They were off on a vacation of their own. And Sheba got right down on the floor and did that immediately because she was absolutely wiped out. But I love these dogs a great deal. But you know another dog that is really cool, Matthew? The Bolshoi, which is from Russia. These dogs.
For you.
Do it for you. Dude, these things were legit bear hunting dogs. Did you know that?
I did, actually. That's why they got teeth that are razor sharp.
And that's also why they got the long schnoot, so that way they can go and reach under and really get business done. Like, this is one hell of a dog right here. Pretty impressive. But, you know, they are a little weird looking, I will admit. They look like Slender Man's pet dog. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's just really lanky. Like, it's a kind of weirdly...
Kind of creepy, honestly.
Yeah, they're creepy, but that's kind of why they're cool, you know? They're kind of creepy, but they also seem a little sweet. And then, let's see, what's another unique one that's pretty cool? The collie. Collies are pretty cool. You don't see those a lot anymore. It used to be fairly common. I like these dogs. I just like them because they're fluff.
Yeah, I mean, I like that dog. I mean, it looks good to me.
You sound kind of like you're questioning that a little.
Oh no, I like it. I like it. I don't like those pups.
Oh, little puppy. They're so sweet. I like the puppies. Let's see here. Is there another dog I can think of really quickly to throw out to y'all that is also really cool? I can't think of any. But anyways, with that, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Sir Real User 9, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Sir Real User, for that support. They said, Spike says, thanks for the mention. And LSA for victory. He said, I'm going to watch Vanilla Ice on Rift Tracks, so catch you later.
And I hope you enjoy Vanilla Ice on Rift Tracks, Surreal User 9. And thank you so much for telling us that Spike enjoyed the mention. And we are more than happy to mention Spike on stream. And I got to thank you so much once again for support. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And I hope you have fun watching that incredible Vanilla Ice on Rift Tracks. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Live Laugh Toaster Bath. He puts in a 31 Australian, and big thanks to Live Laugh in the toaster and something having to do with the bath. I'm not sure about that part. But they said, good evening, enforcers, for the holiday punching powder fund. And they said, haha, grr. Can't have too much punching powder on the road. I just woke up. Please take one from the chat. LSA.
And welcome. Good morning to you. Live, Laugh, Toaster Bath from Australia. And of course, thank you so much for supporting the Punching Powder Fund. We will need some punching powder because who knows? We might have to rock 'em, sock 'em some point on this trip. Who knows? Who really knows? But still, beyond that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to take one from the chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And this one right here is going to go to Ronald Mead, who said, do you think that the Ukrainians will be able to stop the slow advance of the Russians in the south?
It's looking pretty tough right now. I don't think they'll be able to stop it until the Russians actually start to fight around or inside of Pokrovsk directly, to be entirely honest, because it looks as though they can't really stabilize the situation out in the countryside. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Not really the best answer, but an honest and accurate answer in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have another super chat from GunFox61. Another today in history. This is a $10 super chat, and thank you, GunFox, for the second support of the night. He said, today in history, 1963, the Moscow-Washington hotline between the leaders of the U.S. and the Soviet Union goes into operation. He said, also in 2005, Hurricane Katrina devastates much of the U.S. Gulf Coast.
And thank you so much for the support, GunFox61. I remember back in the day, that whole Katrina thing. We actually went to the city of Biloxi before it got absolutely wrecked by Hurricane Katrina, and there was a lot of cool stuff down here. But nowadays, it seems like Biloxi never really recovered from it, and it's like a It's like an unmitigated living hell. But hey, Amtrak is returning service to Biloxi, so they got something to live for at this point down there. They got something. By the way, some people are probably wondering, where is that service going? Oh, where would it be coming from? It's coming from New Orleans, and it stops in Bay St. Louis, I think Biloxi and Gulfport, and then it moves on to stop in Pascagoula, and then it terminates in Mobile. So it's a pretty decent service, interestingly enough. It's pretty much a Gulf Coast service. So it'll be pretty neat to see that return. But yeah, Hurricane Katrina was pretty rough. I was a little baby pretty much when that happened. I was maybe 3. But I still have actually some small memories of being in Biloxi before the hurricane hit. And Matthew, I remember going to that little carnival on the beach pretty much. You remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. And then that hurricane just like wiped it off the face of the earth.
Yeah, literally wiped it off the face of the earth. The only thing that was left was the concrete foundations, and no one really ever recovered from that down there. It's really sad that that happened, but it's kind of just life, really. But still, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least that day in history. And also, that hotline has been utilized a lot in between Russia and the president, hasn't it? Yeah, sure. But still, thank you so much once again for adding some more day in history facts, Gunfox61. We greatly appreciate them. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one is going to go to Joseph M. Sika, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Joseph, as well, for that support. Let's see here. He said, hey, bro, still wanting to put in a super chat. Let's see here. I'll have to defer to the enforcer on the shout-out there. But he said, so bad to hear about the F-16 pilot, but no. He says they are learning.
And I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, Joseph M. Sika. Sadly, we do not promote other channels here on this channel. We generally don't do that because over the past, we have tried to promote other channels and say nothing but good things about them, and usually those specific channels come back and then kick us in our teeth like we deserve for trying to help them out and plug them. So we just generally don't plug anyone anymore, kind of as a general rule. So I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, but it is very sad to hear about the F-16 pilot. Yeah, but hopefully we'll find out a little bit more information on how that went down. But still, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one also goes to Joseph M. Sika, who puts in the second support of the night, another 10. And thank you, Joseph, once more. He said, I know this is all about UR or IS. I know.
And I thank you so much for the support, Joseph M. Sika. And I would be pretty sure it is about UR or IS or... And I'm pretty sure that it's a fairly simple thing to understand. I'm pretty sure of that. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who helped make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got one from William P., who puts in a $10 donation. Thank you very much, William, as well, for that support. He said, go buy yourselves a package of chocolate peanut butter pie Oreos and take a question from the chat. I've never heard of those, William. That sounds actually quite good. I'll let you in on a little secret, William. I'm starving right now. I'm starving. And everything sounds good, including the Oreos as well. So I'll take some Oreos. I'll take some brisket. I'll take some of that New York pizza, the shepherd's pie. At this point, I'll take the orange chicken. I'll take anything. But thank you, William, for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
Thank you so much for the support, William. I'm also starving, and I would eat anything at this point. But you know... Sometimes we just have to settle on spam. But still, thank you so much once again for support. And we will make sure to take a question from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this question goes to Tony Stank. Tony Stanker. That was a lame joke. It's sort of like a reference to the Marvel movie. I hope Tony appreciated that, or otherwise he'll get mad. But he said, without getting political, when they're... let's see here.
Whoa.
That one gets political, I'm afraid, Tony. Let's see here. Enforcer, what do you think about this one? Do you see it in the spreadsheet?
Sadly, that one is a little political. We'll have to grab another one. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so sadly, we will have to skip that one, Tony. But if you have another one, since I called your name out, send it to me and I will call it out. But this one goes to Judy, who says, when they say special forces, could they be talking about U.S. troops or other troops from other countries?
No. The Ukrainians have their own special forces. There may be some members that are from foreign countries that have volunteered in Ukraine and ended up getting into their special forces. But the truth of the matter is that their special forces are completely exclusive from our own and are not interchangeable. So when they talk about special forces, they're talking about their very own from Ukraine, born and bred, pretty much. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Bradley Barrows, who puts in a 20.
Hey!
And thank you very much for that support. He said, hello from a mailman.
Oh,
He said,
hello.
check out the architecture of the Minneapolis City Hall.
Minneapolis? Hot Dog Man Central. Let's see.
Hot Dog Man Station.
Let's see. Minneapolis City Hall. Let's check it out. City Hall. Let's take a look at it.
Is that like Cricket City Hall?
Why? What is this?
That, I don't know.
I don't know either. Interesting,
Strange.
nevertheless. But wow, look at this. This is something. There's the city hall. Now that actually is a pretty nice city hall. I'm not gonna lie. I like the style.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. I like the green roof.
You know, I think if I remember, Hubert Humphrey. Who's
Hey,
this?
look now, settle down, people. There's no cause for alarm. Why does he look like he's got that whole like dismissive attitude right there? That's like what this is like a portrait of Kim Jong Un when the people start starving and rising up. Look, people, chill out. There's a little morsel for everybody. Just calm down.
Why the hell does the statue feel like it has the same energy as the Seinfeld episode where George Costanza was caught having sex with a maid on like the office desk, and then he was like, "What is there? Something wrong with it? I mean, wasn't someone supposed to tell me? You know, why in the world does the statue have like the same energy?"
I was like, "Come on, man. It's nothing. Don't worry about it, man. It'll be good."
Dude, this guy looks like he's going, "Hey, look, no one told me I couldn't take a shit in the nonfiction section in Books A Million." I mean, it looks like he's saying something like that. That's a weird statue. Oh, look, a tram. That's the thing that was ran over Hot Dog Man's mother.
Oh, look, there's damn attorney advertisements all over it.
Ask Gary.
Oh my god.
Oh my goodness. Maybe Hot Dog Man could call one of those attorneys and finally get one. But still, pretty. Oh, look, there's that statue again. Look, what's wrong with, wiping out a couple of people on a drunk drive on the way home? Is there something wrong with it? It's like, this guy looks like he would say something like that in the statue at least. But let's see here. It's still, I like it. I like this place. Now, I've heard something neat about their Union Station, or at least a historic Union Station, if I can find it. And I cannot find it. Let me just type in Minneapolis Union Station. Minneapolis Union Station. Now, am I getting this wrong? Am I getting this wrong? They do not have a Union Station with actual tracks. Well, they kind of do, but not really. So, ew. Oh, it's at St. Paul, too. It's not even, like, near Minneapolis. Ugh. What the hell is the one I'm thinking of? Like, I think it was on the highway. I think it's Milwaukee, if I'm right. Let me think here. Let me grind the Milwaukee. No, that's not it. That's certainly not it. Yep, I can't think of it. Well, I guess that's a done and good deal right there. But still, maybe one day I'll be able to check out Minneapolis. Matthew, wouldn't you like to check out Minneapolis? I think I'd like to check out Minneapolis one day. How about you, Matthew?
Honestly, I wouldn't care to check the place out. There's one idiot that lives there that makes me not even want to go to the place because I'm like, if that idiot lives there, then I wonder if there's another one. But now, the people in Minneapolis aren't universally bad, by the way. Like, there's actually several viewers in the live chat that are from Minneapolis that tell us that. It's just there's one really big idiot there that I don't even want to be in the vicinity of that idiot. And he's there. He's hanging out somewhere.
Well, but one thing I will say, Matthew, is that taking a trip here, like let's say on the time we're taking off, what if we went up here? We just, try to observe the hot dog man in his natural environment selling hot dogs at the county fair. I mean, what a treat. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. But I can tell you all this, in all honesty, we're not taking a trip to Minnesota. Nothing against Minnesota and nothing against Minneapolis, to be entirely honest. It's just that that's not where we're heading. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for support and bringing up such an interesting place to look at with that City Hall. I liked it. I thought it looked really nice. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Mike Sontag, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Mike, for your support as well. He said, Mr. Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, I appreciate the daily non-biased updates and keep this live going. And I'm about to go out for 9 months to fight the USA fight. And he said, LSA, take a question from the chat, and I appreciate you.
And thank you so much for the support, Mike Sontag. Best of luck with that, by the way. That sounds like a pretty big undertaking right there. And thank you so much for enjoying the daily, non-biased updates. We try our best, and I thank you so much once again for appreciating this channel and helping it to keep on running. And we will make sure to take a question from the chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to David Tablet. He said, I have a crazy thought about that Belgorod situation. He said, could it be the Russians actually bombing the place as their attempt at a false flag?
They could try and conduct a false flag. We're not entirely sure yet because they haven't even tried to make a story out of what happened. But it's quite clear to me that what happened out here was 100% the Russians' fault. They can try and blame it on Ukraine, but there's no way Ukraine could have even hit the city with that kind of a rocket system. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got one from William P. once again, and thank you very much, William, again for the $10 support. He said, look up the South Shore line from northern Indiana to Chicago. It's the last classic interurban in the U.S. trains.
Oh, look at that, William P. You're coming in with a good one. The South Shore line. We can pull that up. Sure. The South Shore line. Here we go. Oh, buddy. We got it right here. Actually, you're wrong. It's not the only... Well, wait a minute. Maybe it is the only one by this definition, William. But there are others. But let's see here. What kind of information do we have here? Is operated by the Northern Indiana Community Transportation District between Millennium Station and downtown Chicago to South Bend International Airport in South Bend, Indiana, United States. The name refers to the most physical line in the service operated over that route. The line was built in 1901 to 1908 by predecessors of the Chicago South Shore and South Bend Railroad, which continues to operate freight service. Wait a minute, they do? Oh, wow. Oh, it's a Class 3. Rare. It's not something that is one of the big 4 Class 1s. Kansas City Southern doesn't count. But, man... That is cool. So, I didn't even know about this, actually. This is news to me. But that's pretty cool. Look at that. Now, I think there is like an interurban service like this, which is the Long Island Railroad, which is really cool in its own right. I actually like the M7s. Which you can see up here at the top. I think they're incredibly neat looking. These on the bottom, not so much. I don't really like them. But these like flat front cab M7s, I think they look incredibly neat. If I'm correct, I think that is an M7. But let's see here. Let me see if I can show y'all some other stuff here about the Long Island Railroad. Let's see here. Yeah, that's an M7. And then they have the new M9s. Which are also kind of the same. It's really just like a box, like, you know, it's just a box on rails, but I still think they're really neat. And then there's another one. I'm trying to think of what the other one is called. Wait a minute, they run freight down the Long Island Railroad? I didn't know this. And that's a small one, New York and Atlantic Railway. It's like a class like 3 or something like that, I guess. I've never heard of them. But still, pretty neat, pretty cool. Oh, look, Matty, we got the 2 New York police officers here. They're going, get out of here! You know, something like that. You know what they're doing.
Hey, no causing trouble in here.
Unless you slide them a hundo. But anyway.
Well, I mean, we make an exception for little for Benjamin.
Well, I mean, you know, if you ask me, I was get on your way. Like something like that. You know, it's like, oh man, no disrespect to the New York police, by the way. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I think this is another interurban. But let me check that. We will say that at the top if it is. Let's see, often abbreviate railroad. Let's see, railroad operates commuter rail service. So it's kind of like an interurban kind of a thing. But I think this is also neat as well. And then you have Brightline, which really isn't an interurban. It's more so like a higher speed rail service, but you know, that one's pretty neat in its own right. It's getting kind of close to being profitable, too. Thank goodness. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we thank you once again for support, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Elka Sir, who puts in a 5 and says, who's excited for the long weekend? And here's for the vacation fund. And remember, simping for the Russie is bad for peace.
And I'd agree. Simping for the Russie. Bad for peace, real bad for peace. But beyond that, big shout out to everyone. Y'all made it to Labor Day weekend. It's here, finally. Thank the Lord. And I gotta say, thank y'all once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because the top 1% of viewers on this channel make half of this channel possible. And so big thanks to you once again for helping this channel to keep it running. And thank you once again for helping us to finally get to third Labor Day weekend in the history of this channel. So with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Brian Mooney, who puts in a $5 donation. And Brian says, "You all helped me get through my night building Super Duty trucks. And did you all hear that Russian troops are getting tickets from traffic cams speeding?"
I did.
And Brian, you're building the Super Duty trucks. I know exactly where you are, by the way. And also, that's very cool you're building the Super Duty trucks. Tell them to lower the prices on those trucks because they're getting a little bit out of hand. They are quality, but they're getting a little bit out of hand. But that's very cool to hear. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, I agree with Matthew. I can't even afford the trucks, sorry, but still, I thank you so much for building them. I think that's really cool. And also, I got to say, yes, I have heard about Russian troops getting the speeding tickets. They get them specifically on the E38 because they're driving so fast. And the traffic cameras in the area haven't been turned off, so they snap pictures of their license plates and then they mail them tickets. And they still have to pay them. Like, no joke, they were still having to pay these tickets, which is pretty funny. So either you die or you get ticketed for speeding, one or the other. And I think that's a really good way the Russians are working this whole thing, because it reminds the Russian soldier what they're really fighting for, the right to get a speeding ticket if they're trying to save their own life. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
And this one is going to go to Jason Carney, who throws in a $1 donation. And thank you very much, Jason, for also supporting the channel, and we appreciate it very much. And with that, we are now moving out of our Super Chat segment, because that's all. And we're moving on to our live chat segment, because we have the Morse code decoders and some live chat questions. And up first, the Morse code decoders of the night are Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Brenew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, and Her Royal Fluffiness. They said that the Morse code says, "The Z is losing more ground, but claiming to be winning, and the Soviet mindset prevails again, and LLT, LSA."
And that is the sound of money, and y'all got that down on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I gotta congratulate y'all for getting that correct on the 919th day of the war. Pretty impressive. We're only 81 days away from the 1000th day of the war, and nevertheless, y'all still getting it correct time and time again. Big shout out to y'all. Big thanks to y'all, by the way, for continuing to do that. And with that, we're now on into the live chats. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
And our first one goes to Big Daddy J, who says, "Is there an age requirement to join the Ukrainian forces?"
Yes, you have to be the age, I believe, of 18 or 17. I'm not really sure. I think it's actually just 18. In America, I know that the rule is that you can join the army or the military at large at 18 years old, but you can join at 17 with parental permission. And that means that you go to basic in the middle of your summer break, in between, your junior year and your senior year, and then you kind of like don't even have a summer break. You just kind of go through basic, which isn't that pleasant, and then you come right back to school, which isn't that fun. But if you want to do that, you technically can. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this next live chat question goes to Silver Channel, who says, "Has any word of civilian, political, or military unrest or criticizing occurred in Belgorod that would gain Putin's attention?"
We haven't heard of any yet, but I'm pretty sure after the occurrences of today, there's probably going to be a lot of that popping up over the next week, but it'll probably be suppressed and crushed pretty quickly as well. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And this question is going to go to O-Tubes, who says, "Russia says the British, the Georgians, and the Polish, mercenaries that is, are fighting in Kursk. What do you think's the truth?"
Technically, that is true. They're members of the International Legion, but we have seen pictures and proof of foreign volunteers fighting inside of the Kursk Oblast. They're really not mercenaries, but they're foreign fighters, not of Ukrainian citizenship. So technically that is true to a degree, but of course they're putting a specific propaganda spin on it at the same time. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we've got a question from Bullseye Bob, who says, "Does Russia have to pay for the damage that they do to the city of Belgorod, or do they just give Belgorod the shaft of covering the repairs.
They're probably going to give them the shaft and let them cover the repairs, because the Russian central government very rarely ever issues or gives out money that is not going directly to Moscow or St. Petersburg. So I would say they're probably just going to get the shaft and they're going to have to fix it themselves or not fix it at all. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to O-Tubes, once again, who said, I seen a video last night that they think maybe Russia has a trap for Ukraine, with Ukraine advancing into Russia, and do you think it really is a trap?
Reread that one again, Matthew. Reread that line.
They want to know. They want to know, because they've heard some talk about the Kursk invasion being a trap for the Ukrainians. Do you think the Russians are setting a trap, or is it really an actual invasion and there's no trap to it?
It's an actual invasion, no strings attached. It's just a straightforward invasion, best way I could put it. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Anthony Boer, who says, do you think that this was Putin's way to be sending a message to Belarus, and if it keeps happening, cut it backfire on him, and then Belarus attacks Russia? What do you think?
I would say, if anything, the Belarusians will never attack Russia themselves. They would get curb stomped by, like, the Russians are bad off, but Belarus is a joke compared even to Russia. They would get curb stomped even by the Russians. So they'll never end up attacking Russia. What they would probably do is they would probably end up distancing themselves and immediately trying to flip over to the western side for protection if it really got bad for them. That's what I would think would happen, but once again, we don't know the internal dialogue going on in Belarus at the moment to know for sure, but that would be my best guess. And so with that, we are on, crazily enough, I'm looking at the spreadsheet here, we are on to the fourth to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Vitaly, who says, I hear that Ruskies are pulling a good amount of people from frontline regions to try to respond to the Kursk situation. Is this accurate, and will it slow the Russian advance? Maybe.
Yes, they are pulling troops from many different areas inside of Ukraine, including the Vovchansk front, Chasiv Yar, the Kremlin Forest, and also the southern fronts. But we haven't seen them diverting any from the Pokrovsk front in any particularly large numbers. So we believe that their progress around Pokrovsk will probably not slow, but any kind of progress or defensive abilities in other regions has been severely hindered due to a large amount of those forces being relocated into the Kursk Oblast at this point. So in some senses, yes, it will have an impact. In others, it won't really have that much of an impact. But still, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on, hang on here. Yeah, there we go. We are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Barry Badranath, who says, is it possible that a Ukrainian Special Forces team broke in and aimed an MLRS near Belgorod, and that there was an incursion that started a couple days ago in the same direction?
It's possible that something like that could happen, but I feel like it's not likely, because the Ukrainians wouldn't want to fire a Russian grad at Belgorod, because it would eventually come out and there would be pretty decent proof they stole a rocket launcher and fired it at their own city. And it also doesn't do a lot for Ukraine, because no matter what happens, even if it clearly was Russian incompetence or a special forces team doing that, they're going to blame it on Ukraine, and that doesn't really end up boding too well for them. So I would say if the Ukrainians ever had any involvement in doing something like this, they probably certainly did not. And also, the Ukrainians never just wildly attack civilian areas like this with no real aim. That's something that we've never really seen Ukraine do so far. So I'd also be doubting that the Ukrainian special forces were involved in this for that specific reason as well. But still a very interesting question, though, because that certainly does look like it could happen based on what we've seen in the Belgorod area near the border. But I'm still doubting it a little bit. But with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Richard Head, who says, have the Ukrainians found the Russian forces that are trapped, or are they spread out in the area, or are they actively looking for them?
Let's see. From what we know, the Russians are generally just trapped. We don't know the situation in Malaya Lichnia right now. We don't know if those forces were completely wiped out, surrendered, or somehow conducted a breakout back to their lines. We don't really know which way that went. We're still counting them as encircled, but largely what the Ukrainians do whenever they encircle a force is that they end up putting enough pressure on them that they're not taking really high casualties on their own, but they're also wearing the Russians down really quickly and forcing them to surrender. So we don't know exactly how that went in Malaya Lichnia, but I would assume that they probably either wiped out the force completely, forced it into surrendering, or in the very, very slight chance, those Russians may have conducted a successful breakout and rejoined their main line, although taking probably significant losses in the process. But with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Christian Cruz. He said, my question is, Ukraine attacked Russia, and where is the CSTO, Russia's version of NATO, and why aren't the other countries sending troops?
The CSTO is really like non-existent, to be entirely honest. It's a very loose alliance of nations. We don't really see a lot coming out of it most of the time. And so that would be my best answer, is that the CSTO doesn't really work like NATO would, at least in practice, like we think it would. So that's why no one's really come to their aid. Also, Russia hasn't requested for anyone to come to their aid either, or raise the issue. So that may also be the reason why we're not really seeing anyone getting involved. But with that, I hope that does address that question incredibly well. And with that, it is time for us to round out tonight's stream. I've got to say, it's been one hell of a stream. I've got to thank every single one of y'all once again for joining. If y'all really did enjoy this, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Well, wait a minute. Sorry, that's something for the short war videos. We don't do that here on the streams. But still, I thank you all so much once again for watching. We will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all for another great stream tonight. We'll see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern on the next night of War News, and also, hopefully, midday as well tomorrow if there's enough news to cover midday. We've been sort of slacking on the short war videos because there's not enough news midday to cover, so hopefully we can get back to it here pretty shortly. But with that, we'll see you all tomorrow. Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Yes. The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Spring on me,